Hi, my amazing Love Lies Diaries family. Welcome back to my channel, Tile, and if you're new here, welcome home. Before we dive into today's story, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button. Seriously, it helps more than you know. Like this video if it resonates with you, and please tell me your thoughts in the comment, because what I'm about to share with you today, God, where do I even begin? This is one of the most complicated, confusing, and emotionally devastating stories I've ever lived through. And I've lived through some stuff, trust me. My name is Janelle, and this is the story of how I found out my boyfriend was my college crush's brother. But it's also about so much more than that. It's about timing, about the ghosts we carry with us, about how the past can reach into your present and completely destroy everything you thought you knew about your life. So grab some tea, get comfortable, and buckle up, because this story, it's gonna take us on a journey.
Let me take you back, way back, to a time when I thought I knew what I wanted, when the world felt smaller and possibilities felt infinite. I was 19 years old, a sophomore at Northwestern University. And let me paint you a picture of who I was then, because she's important to this story, that version of me. I was studying English literature with dreams of becoming a writer. I wore vintage band t-shirts and ripped jeans, thinking I was being edgy, but probably just looking like every other college girl trying to find herself. My hair was longer then, almost to my waist, and I had this habit of tucking it behind my ear when I was nervous, which was often. I was the kind of girl who read poetry in coffee shops, who believed in soulmates and fate and all those beautiful, naive things that make you vulnerable to heartbreak. I journaled everything. And I mean everything. I still have those journals, tucked away in a box in my closet. Sometimes I wonder if I should burn them, but I'm getting ahead of myself. It was October of my sophomore year. Halloween was approaching, and campus was buzzing with that electric energy that only comes with fall semester. You know the feeling, when the leaves are changing, the air is crisp, and everything feels possible. My roommate, Sarah, God, I haven't thought about Sarah in years. She was dating this guy named Chris who was in a fraternity. Not my scene, typically. I was more of an indie music, small house party kind of girl. But Sarah convinced me to go to this Halloween party with her. "Come on, Janelle," she said, applying mascara in our tiny dorm mirror. "You've been buried in books for weeks. When's the last time you actually talked to a guy who wasn't a fictional character?" She wasn't wrong. I'd been in a bit of a social hibernation, focusing on my studies, nursing a broken heart from a summer fling that had ended badly. You know how it is when you're young. Every heartbreak feels like the end of the world. "I don't even have a costume," I protested, but I was already mentally going through my closet. "You're a literature major," Sarah laughed. "Be a character from a book. Easy." So there I was, October 30th, dressed as Elizabeth Bennet from Pride and Prejudice. I'd managed to put together this Regency-inspired dress from pieces I found at thrift stores, and I thought I looked pretty good. My hair was in an updo with loose curls framing my face, and I felt elegant, different from my usual casual self. The party was at this massive house off campus, one of those sprawling places that somehow fit like 50 college students and still had room for a dance floor. The music was loud. The air was thick with cheap beer and cologne, and everyone was in varying degrees of creative costumes. I remember feeling overwhelmed at first. Sarah disappeared almost immediately to find Chris, leaving me standing in the entryway holding a red Solo cup and trying to look like I belonged there. And that's when I saw him. Malik. He was across the room, and I swear it was like something out of a movie. You know those moments when time slows down, and the music gets softer, and suddenly you can't focus on anything else? That's exactly what happened. He was tall, probably 6'2" or 6'3", with dark skin, and these incredible cheekbones that could cut glass. His hair was cut short, neat, professional even in this chaotic party atmosphere. He was wearing a simple costume, a black suit with a white shirt, no tie, vampire fangs hanging around his neck like he'd taken them off. Classic vampire, but somehow he made it look effortless. But it wasn't just his looks. It was the way he carried himself. Confident, but not arrogant. He was talking to a group of people, and I could see them hanging on his every word. He had this presence, this gravitational pull that made you want to orbit around him. I stood there staring. God, I was such a stalker, trying to work up the courage to walk over there. But what would I say? "Hi, I'm Elizabeth Bennet, and you're really attractive?" "Yeah, right." I was about to give up and go find Sarah when the most amazing thing happened. He looked over. Our eyes met across that crowded room, and he smiled. Not just any smile. This slow, warm smile that reached his eyes and made my stomach do actual flips. And then, I still can't believe this happened. He excused himself from his group and started walking toward me. Toward me. I panicked. Literally panicked. Started looking around for an escape route, wondering if I could somehow disappear into the crowd. But he was already there, standing right in front of me, and up close he was even more devastating. "Elizabeth Bennet," he said, and his voice was smooth and rich like good coffee. "I have to say, you're much prettier than I imagined when I read the book." I nearly choked on my drink. "You've read Pride and Prejudice?" He laughed, and the sound sent shivers down my spine. Double major, business and English lit. I wrote my senior thesis on Austen's treatment of marriage and social class. I was done. Completely gone. A guy who looked like that and could discuss Jane Austen? My 19-year-old self never stood a chance. "I'm Malik," he said, extending his hand. "Janelle." I managed shaking it. His hand was warm and larger than mine, and I noticed he had long fingers. Piano fingers, my mom would have called them. "So, Janelle, who becomes Elizabeth, what's your take on Mr. Darcy? Hero or problematic alpha male?" And just like that, we were deep in conversation. About books, about literature, about everything. He was a senior, studying business with plans to go into marketing. But he talked about books with the same passion I did. He'd traveled, spent a summer in London, had backpacked through Europe. He told me stories that made me laugh, made me want to see the world through his eyes. We talked for hours. I completely lost track of time, of the party happening around us. At some point, we migrated to a quieter corner, sitting on this old couch that had probably seen better decades. The music was still loud, people were still dancing and drinking and doing college party things, but it felt like we were in our own little bubble. "You know," he said at one point, leaning closer so I could hear him over the music, "I was ready to leave this party until I saw you." My heart did that thing where it speeds up and slows down at the same time. Really? Really? I'm not usually one for these big parties. Too old for the scene, I guess. But Chris begged me to come, said it would be fun. He smiled that devastating smile again. I'm glad he did. The night got later. People started leaving or passing out or disappearing upstairs in pairs. Sarah found me eventually, drunk and giggly, telling me she was going home with Chris, and did I have a way back to the dorm? "I can drive you," Malik offered immediately. I haven't been drinking. The ride back to campus was short but felt eternal. He drove this older Honda Civic that was clean and smelled like his cologne, something woodsy and masculine that I wanted to bottle up and keep forever. We talked more about our classes, about our plans after graduation. He was graduating in the spring and already had a job lined up at a marketing firm in Chicago. When we got to my dorm, he walked me to the door. "I had a really great time tonight, Janelle," he said, and his voice was softer now, more intimate. "Me too," I whispered, because suddenly I felt shy again.
We stood there for a moment and I really thought he was going to kiss me. The air between us felt charged, electric. He reached up and tucked a loose curl behind my ear, the same gesture I'd been doing all night when I was nervous. "You're beautiful," he said quietly, and my heart nearly stopped. But then someone stumbled out of the dorm behind us, drunk and loud, and the moment was broken. Malik stepped back, cleared his throat. "I should let you get some sleep," he said. I nodded, disappointed but trying not to show it. "Thank you for the ride. Any time." I waited for him to ask for my number. Waited for him to suggest we get coffee sometime. Waited for anything that would mean this wasn't ending. But he just smiled that beautiful smile, said, "Good night, Elizabeth," and walked back to his car. I watched him drive away, standing in the cold October air in my Elizabeth Bennet costume, feeling like I'd just lived through the most romantic and heartbreaking night of my life. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? I lay in my narrow dorm bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our conversation. Every smile, every laugh, every time our knees had brushed when we were sitting on that couch. Sarah came home the next morning with walk of shame hair and a huge grin. "So," she said, collapsing on her bed, "I saw you talking to Malik Henderson all night. Holy shit, Janelle. He's gorgeous." Henderson sat up. "His last name is Henderson." "Yeah, he's Chris's friend from high school. They grew up together. He's like super smart and going places. Chris says he's already got this amazing job lined up in Chicago." He studied my face. "Why? What happened?" I told her everything. About our conversation, about the ride home, about that almost kiss that wasn't. "Wait," Sarah said, frowning. "He didn't get your number." "No." "Did you get his?" "No." I felt stupid admitting it. "Janelle." Sarah threw a pillow at me. "What were you waiting for?" That was the question, wasn't it? What had I been waiting for? I guess I'd been waiting for him to make the move. 19-year-old me was still caught up in all those old-fashioned ideas about romance, about men pursuing women. I thought if he was interested he would have asked. But as the days passed, I started to wonder if maybe I'd misread the whole thing. Maybe he was just being nice. Maybe he talked to everyone that way. Maybe I'd imagined the electricity between us. I looked for him on campus constantly. Northwestern isn't huge, but it's big enough that you can go weeks without seeing someone if you're not in the same circles. I found myself taking different routes to class, eating at different dining halls, hoping to run into him. I even looked him up on Facebook. This was back when Facebook was still primarily for college students, remember? His profile was mostly private, but I could see his profile picture. It was him in a suit at what looked like some formal event, smiling that same smile that had made me weak in the knees. I stared at that picture for probably an hour, debating whether to send him a friend request. But what would I say? "Hi, remember me from that party where we talked all night and then you didn't ask for my number?" I never sent the request. November passed. December came. Finals arrived, and I threw myself into studying, trying to forget about him. But he was always there in the back of my mind. I'd be reading Chaucer or working on a paper about symbolism in The Great Gatsby. And suddenly I'd remember something he'd said about literature, about books, about the way stories could change your life. I started writing about him in my journal. Pages and pages of analysis, trying to understand what had happened that night. Trying to figure out if I'd imagined the connection between us. November 15th, I saw someone today who looked like him from behind. Same height, same build, same way of walking with his hands in his pockets. My heart literally stopped for a second before the guy turned around, and it was just some random senior I'd never seen before. This is getting ridiculous. It was one conversation. One night. Why can't I let it go? November 28th, Sarah says I need to just find him and talk to him. She says if I felt that connection, he probably did too, and maybe he's just as confused about why nothing happened as I am. But what if he's not? What if he doesn't even remember my name? December 10th, 3 weeks until graduation. He'll be gone soon, off to Chicago, and I'll never see him again. Maybe that's for the best. Maybe he was just meant to be this beautiful, brief moment in my life. Maybe some stories aren't meant to have endings. Winter break came, and I went home to my parents' house in Milwaukee. It was good to get away from campus, away from the places where I might see him. I worked at a bookstore, read novels, hung out with high school friends who were home from their various colleges. But even there, surrounded by family and old friends, I found myself thinking about him, wondering what he was doing for the holidays, wondering if he ever thought about me. When I came back to campus in January, I made a decision. I was going to find him. I was going to track down Malik Henderson and tell him how I felt. What was the worst that could happen? He could reject me. Least I'd know. But when I asked Sarah to ask Chris about him, Chris delivered news that hit me like a physical blow. "Oh, Malik," Chris said casually. He graduated early, finished his requirements in December and started his job already. He's in Chicago now. He was gone. I felt something inside me crack. It was such a strange feeling, grieving for something that had never actually existed. For a relationship that had never begun. For possibilities that would now never be explored. That's when he became my what if. You know what I mean, right? We all have them. The people who drift through our lives at the wrong time, in the wrong circumstances. The ones who make us wonder what might have happened if we'd been braver, if we'd spoken up, if the timing had been different. Malik became my gold standard for connection. Every guy I dated after that I compared to him. Did they make me feel the way he had? Could we talk for hours the way we had? Did they see me the way he had seemed to see me that night? The answer was always no. I dated, of course. I wasn't going to become a nun because of one conversation with one guy. But nobody ever measured up. There was Jake, who was sweet but boring. There was David, who was smart but condescending. There was Michael, who was funny but unreliable. None of them were Malik. Spring semester passed. I threw myself into my classes, into my writing. I started dating a guy named Trevor who was nice enough, but even while I was with him, I found myself thinking about that October night. About what might have been. Trevor and I lasted about 3 months before he finally called me out on it. "You're not really here, are you?" he said one night when we were supposed to be watching a movie. "I mean, you're physically here, but mentally you're somewhere else. With someone else." He wasn't wrong. I broke up with him the next day. It wasn't fair to either of us. Junior year came and went. Senior year arrived. I was busier now, working on my senior thesis, applying to graduate programs, figuring out what I wanted to do with my life. The memories of Malik became softer around the edges, less sharp, but they never went away completely.
Sometimes I would catch myself looking for him in crowds. Sometimes I would wonder if he ever thought about me, if he remembered that night at all. Sometimes I would imagine running into him somewhere, a coffee shop, a bookstore, some romantic movie scenario where we'd both be older and wiser and ready for whatever had been between us. But it never happened. I graduated, moved back in with my parents temporarily, then got a job as an editorial assistant at a small publishing house in Minneapolis. It wasn't New York, wasn't the glamorous publishing world I'd imagined, but it was a start. Malik faded into the background of my life. Still there, still part of my story, but not dominating my thoughts anymore. He became this bittersweet memory, this reminder of a moment when anything had felt possible. I dated other people, had relationships, some serious, some not. But there was always this part of me that held back, that remembered what it felt like to have that immediate, powerful connection with someone. And I never found it again. Not until 3 years later, when I met Jordan. By the time I was 25, I'd moved to Chicago for a better job at a larger publishing house. Ironic, right? The city where Malik had moved after graduation. But Chicago is huge, over 2 million people, and I never expected to run into him. Hell, I barely even thought about him anymore. He'd become this comfortable sadness, this old story I sometimes told myself late at night. My new job was at Hartwell and Associates, a mid-sized literary agency that represented both fiction and nonfiction authors. I was an assistant to one of the junior agents, which meant I did everything from reading query letters to scheduling meetings to fetching coffee. But I was learning the business, making connections, and for the first time since college, I felt like I was building toward something. I'd found a small one-bedroom apartment in Lincoln Park, nothing fancy, but it was mine. I'd adopted a cat, a gray tabby I named Fitzgerald, because of course I did. I was starting to build a life. But I was lonely. Not desperately lonely. Not pathetically lonely. Just quietly lonely. I had work friends, but most of them were older, married, in different life phases. I'd joined a book club, taken some yoga classes, done all the things you're supposed to do to meet people in a new city. I'd even tried online dating, with mixed results. I was beginning to think maybe I was too picky. Maybe my standards were unrealistic. Maybe I was still too hung up on a memory from college to be fair to anyone new. That's when Jordan came into my life. It was March, and Chicago was doing that thing it does where it teases you with warm weather and then dumps snow on you just to remind you who's boss. I was at a game night at my coworker Lisa's apartment. She'd been trying to set me up with various people for months, and I'd finally agreed to come to one of her gatherings. It's not a setup, she'd promised. Just friends hanging out, playing games, eating too much pizza. Very low pressure. And it really was low pressure. There were about 8 people there, a mix of Lisa's work friends and neighborhood friends. We were playing this ridiculous party game that involved making up stories with random word cards, and everyone was laughing and drinking wine and just having fun. Jordan was Lisa's neighbor from across the hall. He worked in graphic design at a small marketing firm, was originally from St. Louis, had moved to Chicago about 2 years earlier. He was cute in a gentle way, not devastatingly handsome like Malik had been, but attractive in a softer, more approachable manner. He had sandy brown hair that was always a little messy, like he'd run his hands through it. Green eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses that he was constantly adjusting. He was probably 5'10" with a lean build and these expressive hands that moved when he talked. But what drew me to Jordan wasn't his looks. It was his laugh. He had this wonderful, infectious laugh that made everyone else want to laugh too. And he was funny. Not in a show-offy, look-at-me way, but in a gentle, observational way that made you see the humor in everyday situations. "Okay," he said during one round of the game, "so I've got the words elephant, grocery store, and romantic. Here's my story. Last week, I was at Whole Foods, trying to decide between organic and regular bananas, the eternal struggle, when this woman next to me starts having a very loud phone conversation about her dating life." He did this perfect impression of an overly dramatic phone conversation, complete with gestures and voices, and had us all cracking up. So, I'm standing there with my bananas, basically eavesdropping on this woman's entire romantic history, when she suddenly says, he was sweet, but dating him was like dating an elephant, impossible to ignore, but probably going to end in property damage. We were all dying at this point. And I realized, Jordan continued, grinning, that this woman had just perfectly described every relationship I'd ever had. I am romantically equivalent to an elephant in a grocery store. The way he could make fun of himself, the way he could find humor in awkward situations, it was incredibly appealing. I found myself watching him more closely as the night went on. He was kind, too. When Lisa's elderly neighbor knocked on the door to complain about the noise, Jordan immediately went to talk to her, apologizing and offering to bring the noise level down. When one of the other guests spilled red wine on Lisa's white couch, Jordan was the first one up with paper towels and stain remover, making jokes to diffuse the tension. "Crisis management is basically my superpower," he said, scrubbing at the stain. "You should see what I can do with a printer jam and a deadline." At the end of the night, as people were leaving, Jordan lingered. He helped Lisa clean up, stacking plates and wiping down surfaces. "You don't have to do that," I said, gathering empty wine glasses. "I know," he said, smiling at me. "But my mom raised me right. Plus, if I help clean up, Lisa's more likely to invite me back." "Are you worried about that?" He paused in his plate stacking. "Well, I was hoping I might see you again, so yeah." It was such a simple, honest thing to say. No game playing, no mystery. Just straightforward interest. "I was hoping the same thing," I admitted. His face lit up. "Really? Really?" We exchanged numbers before I left. He texted me before I even got home. "Jordan, thanks for making game night so much more fun. I hope I see you again soon." Me, "Thank you for the laughs. And the elephant story will haunt my grocery shopping forever." Jordan, mission accomplished, grinning face with smiling eyes. Our first official date was lunch the following Saturday. Nothing fancy, just a little cafe near my apartment that served amazing sandwiches. But we talked for 3 hours. About work, about books, about our families, about our terrible online dating experiences. Jordan was easy to talk to. He listened, really listened, and asked follow-up questions. He remembered details from previous conversations. He was interested in my work, my opinions, my stories. "So, what made you want to get into publishing?" he asked over our second cups of coffee. I told him about falling in love with books as a kid, about wanting to help bring great stories to the world, about my dreams of maybe writing someday when I was brave enough. "What kind of stories would you write?" he asked. "I don't know," I said. "Real stories, I guess. About people and relationships and all the messy, complicated ways we connect with each other." He nodded thoughtfully. "I think the best stories are always about connection. Or the lack of it." Something about the way he said that, with such quiet conviction, made me look at him more closely. "What about you? Have you always wanted to be a designer?" "Not always," he admitted. "I actually started college as a business major. But I was miserable. Took an art class junior year just for fun, and everything clicked. Sometimes you have to take detours to find where you're supposed to be." The conversation flowed so easily. There were no awkward silences, no moments where I felt like I had to perform or be someone other than myself. Jordan seemed to genuinely like the person I was, the book nerd, the overthinker, the woman who got too invested in fictional characters. Our second date was dinner and a movie. Our third was a walk along the lakefront, bundled up against the cold but talking so intently we barely noticed the weather. By our fourth date, I realized something. I felt safe with Jordan. Not just physically safe, but emotionally safe. Like I could be completely myself without judgment. It was different from what I'd felt with Malik. That had been fireworks and electricity and heart-stopping attraction. This was warmer, steadier. Like coming home after a long day. "I like you, Janelle," Jordan said as we stood outside my apartment building after that fourth date. "I really, really like you." "I like you too," I said, and meant it. When he kissed me for the first time, it was soft and sweet and perfect for who we were in that moment. Not earth-shattering, but genuine. Real. We started spending more and more time together. Jordan would come over after work and help me cook dinner. He was actually a better cook than I was, which was not a high bar. We'd watch Netflix and debate the merits of various shows. He introduced me to documentaries. I introduced him to foreign films. "You have very sophisticated taste," he said one night after we'd watched a particularly artsy French movie. "Is that code for pretentious?" I asked, curled up against him on my couch. "It's code for interesting," he said, pressing a kiss to the top of my head. "I like that you make me think about things differently." Jordan fit into my life seamlessly. He got along with my coworkers, charmed my book club friends, even won over my mother during our first phone call. "He sounds lovely, sweetheart," Mom said. "Very polite, very respectful. And he makes you laugh. I can hear it in your voice." She was right. Jordan did make me laugh. Every day, multiple times a day. He had this gift for finding humor in the mundane, for making even frustrating days feel lighter. When I got food poisoning from a sketchy sushi place, he showed up at my apartment with ginger ale, crackers, and terrible reality TV shows to distract me. "This is not glamorous," I warned him, looking like death warmed over in my pajamas. "Good thing I'm not here for glamour," he said, settling in to take care of me. When I had a panic attack about a big presentation at work, he talked me through breathing exercises and helped me practice my speech until I felt confident. When my cat Fitzgerald needed emergency surgery, Jordan drove me to the vet at 2 a.m. and sat with me in the waiting room until we knew Fitz was okay. "You didn't have to do this," I said, exhausted and grateful. "Yes, I did," he said simply. "This is what people do for each other." 6 months in, I realized I was falling in love with him. Not the desperate, consuming kind of love that keeps you awake at night. Something deeper and more sustainable. The kind of love that made me want to build a life with someone. Jordan felt like home. Like safety. Like the kind of relationship that could last. "I love you," I told him one night as we were lying in bed, his arm around me, both of us half asleep. "I love you too," he murmured against my hair. "So much." And I believed him. I believed in us. Which is why what happened next was so devastating. Because sometimes the past doesn't stay buried. Sometimes it comes back to destroy everything you've built, everything you thought you knew about yourself and your life. Sometimes the universe has a very twisted sense of humor. We'd been together for 8 months when it happened. 8 months of steady, comfortable happiness. 8 months of building something real together. It was a Friday night in November, almost exactly 3 years after that Halloween party where I'd met Malik. Jordan and I had fallen into this wonderful routine where Friday nights were just ours. No work, no social obligations, just the two of us ordering takeout and watching movies or talking or just being together. That particular Friday, Jordan had suggested we watch this documentary about the publishing industry that he'd found. "I thought you might find it interesting," he'd said. since it's your world and all. It was sweet, the way he was always finding things he thought I'd like, always showing interest in my work and my passions. We'd order Thai food and were settled on his couch, my feet in his lap, both of us comfortable in that easy intimacy that comes with time. About halfway through the documentary, I realized I needed to charge my phone. The battery was almost dead, and I was expecting a call from my sister later. "Do you have a phone charger I can borrow?" I asked. "Yeah, there should be one in my bedroom," Jordan said, not taking his eyes off the TV. "Check the nightstand drawer." His bedroom was neat and simple, very him. A queen-sized bed with a navy comforter, a dresser, a small desk where he sometimes worked from home. Nothing fancy, but clean and comfortable. I opened the nightstand drawer, looking for a charger cable. Instead, I found the usual nightstand detritus, receipts, loose change, a half-empty pack of gum, some business cards, and a photograph. It was face down, mixed in with some other papers. I almost didn't look at it. I wasn't snooping, just looking for a phone charger, but something made me pick it up and flip it over. It was a family photo. Professional, like the kind families get taken at JCPenney or Sears. There were 5 people in it, an older couple who were obviously parents, and 3 grown men who were clearly their sons. And one of those men was Malik. I stared at the photo for a long moment, my brain trying to process what I was seeing. There was no mistaking him. Same face, same smile, same presence that had captivated me all those years ago. He was standing next to Jordan, his arm around Jordan's shoulder in that casual, brotherly way. Brothers. They were brothers. My hands started shaking. Actually shaking, like I was having some kind of physical reaction to the information my brain couldn't quite process. Jordan's last name was Henderson. Had always been Henderson. I'd known that from the beginning, but Henderson is a common name, and it had never occurred to me to make any connection. Why would it? But Malik Henderson. Jordan Henderson. Brothers. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at that photo. It could have been 30 seconds or 30 minutes. Time seemed to have stopped completely. "Hey, did you find a charger?" Jordan's voice called from the living room, snapping me back to reality. I looked around the drawer frantically, finally locating a charging cable under some papers. My hands were still shaking as I plugged in my phone. "Yeah, got it," I called back, hoping my voice sounded normal. But inside, I was completely falling apart. I walked back to the living room in a daze, the documentary still playing on the TV, Jordan still lounged comfortably on the couch. He looked so normal, so unchanged. But everything was different now. Everything. "You okay?" he asked, glancing over at me. "You look pale." I sat down next to him, but I felt like I was moving through water. Like everything was happening in slow motion. "Jordan," I said, and my voice sounded strange to my own ears. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." He paused the documentary and turned to face me fully. "Your family," I started, then stopped. "How do you even begin this conversation?" "Do you have brothers?" He smiled. "Yeah, 2. I'm the youngest. There's Marcus, who's 2 years older, and Malik, who's the oldest. He's about 4 years older than me." "Why?" "Malik." There it was, confirmed. "What's Malik like?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Jordan's smile got wider, the way it always did when he talked about his family. "He's great. Really successful, really smart. He's in marketing, has this amazing job in the city. He's kind of the golden child, you know? Always has been. Everything just comes easy to him. School, work, relationships, all of it." He paused, thinking. "You'd probably like him, actually. He's into books and literature, like you. He was an English major in college before he switched to business. Always reading something." My stomach dropped. Of course Jordan thought I'd like Malik. Of course he did. Does he live here? In Chicago?" "Yeah. He's got this great apartment downtown. We try to get together pretty regularly, family dinners, that sort of thing." Jordan studied my face. Why all the questions about my brother? This was it. The moment of truth. I could tell him everything about the party, about Malik, about the crush that had haunted me for years. I could be completely honest. Or I could lie. I could pretend this was just casual curiosity and hope this never came up again. But I've never been a good liar. And Jordan deserved the truth. Jordan, I said slowly, I think I met your brother once. In college. He raised his eyebrows. Really? That's crazy. Small world. Where did you meet him? And so I told him. Everything. I told him about the Halloween party at Northwestern, about the costume, about our conversation that lasted hours, about how connected I'd felt to him, about the ride home, about the almost kiss, about how he'd never asked for my number. I told him about how I'd looked for Malik on campus for months, about how I'd found out he'd graduated early and moved to Chicago, about how he'd become my what-if, the standard against which I'd measured every other relationship. I watched Jordan's face as I talked, watched his expression shift from amused curiosity to confusion to something harder to read. So, he said when I finished, you had a crush on my brother? Yes, I said quietly. A big one. Jordan was quiet for a long moment, processing. The documentary was still paused on the TV, frozen on some talking head discussing the future of publishing. The Thai food was getting cold on the coffee table. This is... He started, then stopped. This is really weird, Janelle. I know. I mean, what are the odds? You have this whole thing with my brother, and then years later, you end up dating me? I know it's strange. Strange? Jordan laughed, but it wasn't his usual warm laugh. It was sharp, uncomfortable. Strange doesn't begin to cover it. I could see his wheels turning, could practically watch him replaying our entire relationship through this new lens. Is that why you were interested in me? He asked suddenly. Because of him? Because I look like him? No, I said immediately. Jordan, no. We look nothing alike. We're brothers, Janelle. Of course we look alike. You really don't, I insisted. You have completely different. But I remind you of him somehow, right? That's why you were drawn to me. I could hear the hurt in his voice, the insecurity creeping in. This was exactly what I'd been afraid of. Jordan, listen to me, I said, reaching for his hand. What I felt for Malik it was a college crush. A fantasy. What I feel for you is real. It's completely different. He pulled his hand away. Different how? Because I actually know you, I said desperately. I love you for who you are, not for some idealized memory of a conversation I had when I was 19. But I could see that my words weren't reaching him. He stood up, started pacing around his living room. This explains so much, he said, more to himself than to me. What do you mean? I always felt like there was something you were holding back. Some part of yourself you weren't giving me. He turned to look at me. It's because you were comparing me to him, wasn't it? Jordan. All this time, I thought I was building something real with you. But really, I was just, what? A consolation prize? A substitute. That's not true, I said, standing up too. That's not true at all. Isn't it? His voice was getting louder, more agitated. You spent years pining over my brother, and then you conveniently fall for me? Come on, Janelle. Even you have to see how fucked up that is. I felt tears starting to burn behind my eyes. This was going so much worse than I'd imagined. I fell for you because you're kind and funny and gentle, I said. Because you make me feel safe. Because you're nothing like him. Nothing like him? Jordan stopped pacing. We grew up in the same house, Janelle. We have the same parents, the same values, the same sense of humor. How can you say I'm nothing like him? Because you're not, I said, frustrated. Malik he was this larger-than-life figure. Confident, magnetic, intimidating. You're real. You're human. I trailed off, realizing too late how that sounded. I'm what? Jordan asked quietly. I'm safe? I'm the boring brother? The one who's easy to settle for. That's not what I meant. Isn't it? We stared at each other across his living room, and I could feel everything we'd built together starting to crumble. Jordan, I said softly, I love you. I'm in love with you, not with some memory of your brother. He was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was tired. I need some time to think about this, he said. Okay, I said, even though it wasn't okay at all. I understand. I gathered my things, my purse, my phone charger. The one that had started this whole mess. I'll call you tomorrow? I said at the door. Jordan nodded, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. Yeah, tomorrow. I drove home in a daze, my mind spinning. How had everything changed so completely in the span of an hour? This morning, Jordan and I had been happy, secure, planning a weekend together. Now, I didn't know where we stood. But as I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling like I had all those years ago after meeting Malik, I realized that Jordan's reaction scared me because part of me wondered if he was right. Had I been drawn to him because of Malik? Was there some subconscious connection I'd made? I tried to remember our first meeting, that game night at Lisa's. Had Jordan reminded me of someone? Had there been some familiar quality that drew me to him? I didn't think so. But now I couldn't be sure. And that uncertainty was going to haunt everything that came next. Jordan did call the next day. But things were different. I've been thinking all night, he said without preamble when I answered my phone. And I need to ask you some questions. Okay, I said, though my stomach was already clenching with anxiety. When we first met, did I remind you of someone? No, I said honestly. I told you, you and Malik look nothing alike. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking if there was something familiar about me. Some feeling, some recognition. I thought about it carefully. No, Jordan. When I met you, I was attracted to your humor, your kindness. You made me laugh. That's what drew me to you. And you're sure had nothing to do with my last name? I didn't even know your last name when we met, I pointed out. Lisa introduced you as just Jordan from across the hall. There was a pause. When did you find out my last name? I don't know, on our first date maybe? When we exchanged numbers? I was getting frustrated. Jordan, what does this matter? It matters because I need to know if any part of this relationship has been real for you, he said. Or if I've just been living in my brother's shadow this whole time. His pain was evident in his voice, and it broke my heart. But I was starting to feel defensive too. Of course it's been real, I said. How can you even question that? Because you were in love with him, Janelle. You said so yourself. I had a crush on him. One night 3 years ago. That's not the same thing as being in love. You called him your what-if. You said you compared every guy you dated to him. He wasn't wrong. I had said those things. But hearing them repeated back to me, I realized how they must have sounded to Jordan. That was before I met you, I said. Everything changed when I met you. Did it? Or did you just find a way to get close to him through me? The accusation hit me like a slap. Jordan, that's not fair. Isn't it? Think about it, Janelle. You spend years obsessing over some guy, and then you magically fall for his brother? That's not coincidence. That's psychology. I was quiet because I didn't know how to argue with that. Part of me wondered if he might be right. I want to believe you, Jordan continued, his voice softer now. I want to believe that what we have is real. But I need time to figure this out. What does that mean? It means I think we should take a break. The words hit me like a physical blow. A break. Just some space. Some time for both of us to think about what this means. Jordan, please, I said, and I could hear the desperation in my own voice. Don't let something that happened years ago destroy what we have now. I'm not destroying anything, he said. I'm just trying to understand what we actually have. We talked for a few more minutes, but it was clear his mind was made up. He needed space, and I had to respect that, even though it was killing me. The next few weeks were agony. Jordan and I texted occasionally, brief, polite exchanges that felt nothing like our usual easy communication. He was pulling away, and I could feel him slipping through my fingers. I threw myself into work, staying late at the office, taking on extra projects. I canceled plans with friends, ignored calls from my family. I was spiraling, and I knew it, but I didn't know how to stop. You look terrible, Lisa said one day, when she stopped by my desk. When's the last time you went home before 8? I'm fine, I lied. You're not fine. You're a mess. What's going on with you and Jordan? I haven't seen him around lately. I gave her a vague explanation about taking some time apart, but I could see she wasn't buying it. "This is about a guy, isn't it?" she said. "There's always some guy at the center of these dramatic meltdowns." She wasn't wrong, but it was more complicated than that. It was about the past colliding with the present. It was about the stories we tell ourselves about our own lives, and what happens when those stories get challenged. 2 weeks into our break, Jordan texted me. "Jordan, can we talk? In person?" My heart leaped. Maybe he'd figured it out. Maybe he was ready to work through this. Me, of course. "When and where?" "Jordan, tonight? Your place?" Me, "Yes. 7? Jordan, see you then." I spent the entire day anxious and hopeful. I cleaned my apartment, made his favorite pasta dish, bought the wine he liked. I was determined to fix this, to make him understand that what we had was real and worth fighting for. When Jordan arrived that evening, I could tell immediately that something was different about him. He looked tired, older somehow. And there was a distance in his eyes that hadn't been there before. "Hi," I said, opening the door. "Hi," he replied, but he didn't kiss me hello like he usually did. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, looking uncomfortable. "Come in," I said. "I made dinner." "Actually," he said, "I can't stay long. I just wanted to talk." My heart sank. "Okay." We sat on my couch, but not close together like we used to. Jordan perched on the edge, like he was ready to leave at any moment. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he said. "About us, about this whole situation. And I think we need to be honest about what this is." I waited, afraid to speak. "You're a good person, Janelle," he continued. "And I do think you care about me. But I also think you're not over my brother. Maybe you never will be." "That's not true." "Let me finish," he said gently. "I think part of you will always wonder what would have happened if things had worked out with Malik. And I can't be in a relationship where I'm constantly competing with that." "You're not competing with anything," I said desperately. "Jordan, what I felt for Malik it was nothing compared to what I feel for you." "Was it?" he asked. "Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like what you felt for him was this intense, romantic, movie-perfect connection. And what you feel for me is comfortable, safe." The way he said safe made it sound like a dirty word. "There's nothing wrong with safe," I said. "Safe is good. Safe is real. Safe is settling," Jordan said quietly. "And I don't want to be someone you settle for." I felt tears starting to fall. You're not someone I'm settling for." "Aren't I?" He turned to look at me fully. "If Malik walked into this room right now and said he'd made a mistake, that he'd been thinking about you all these years too, that he wanted to be with you, what would you do?" The question hung in the air between us. I opened my mouth to answer, to say of course I'd choose Jordan, but the words wouldn't come. Because I didn't know, and that hesitation, that split second of uncertainty, told Jordan everything he needed to know. "That's what I thought," he said, standing up. "Jordan, wait. I can't do this," he said. "I can't be in love with someone who's in love with the idea of someone else." "I'm not in love with the idea of him," I protested, but even as I said it, I wondered if it was true. "You are," Jordan said sadly. "You're in love with this perfect, romantic story about the one who got away. And I'm just the guy who helped you realize that." He moved toward the door. "So that's it?" I asked, following him. "You're just giving up?" "I'm not giving up," he said. "I'm accepting reality. You deserve to find out what would happen with Malik. And I deserve to be with someone who's completely sure about me." "I am sure about you," I said, but my voice cracked on the words. Jordan paused at the door, his hand on the handle. "No, you're not. And that's okay. But I can't pretend anymore." He turned back to me one last time. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Janelle. I really do." And then he was gone. I stood in my doorway, watching him walk down the hall, feeling like my world was collapsing. The pasta I'd made was getting cold on the stove. The wine was still unopened on the counter. Everything I'd planned for this evening, all my hopes for reconciliation, had crumbled in the span of 20 minutes. But the worst part was the tiny voice in the back of my head that wondered if Jordan was right. If I had been settling, If there was some part of me that had always been waiting for Malik to come back into my life. I hated that voice, but I couldn't silence it. The weeks after Jordan and I broke up were some of the darkest of my adult life. Not because I was dramatically heartbroken, though I was heartbroken, but because I was forced to confront some uncomfortable truths about myself. Had I been settling for Jordan? Had I been using him as a safe substitute for what I'd really wanted? Was I the kind of person who could spend 8 months building a relationship with someone while secretly pining for someone else? I didn't want to believe it. But Jordan's words kept echoing in my head, especially that question. If Malik walked into this room right now, what would you do? The fact that I hadn't been able to answer immediately, definitively, told me everything I needed to know about the state of my heart. I called in sick to work for 3 days and did nothing but lie on my couch, eat ice cream, and watch terrible romantic comedies. Fitzgerald, sensing my distress, barely left my side. "You're pathetic," I told him on day 3, scratching behind his ears. "But at least you're consistent in your affections." He purred and settled more firmly into my lap, as if to say, "That's what real love looks like." On day 4, I forced myself to shower, get dressed, and go back to work. But I was functioning on autopilot, going through the motions without really being present. "You look like hell," my coworker Marcus said bluntly. Marcus was one of the junior agents, about 10 years older than me, and had no filter whatsoever. "Thanks for the pep talk," I muttered, sorting through query letters without really reading them. "Break up." I nodded. "His loss," Marcus said pragmatically. "You want to talk about it?" "Not really." "Good. Talking about breakups is overrated." "You know what's not overrated? Getting back out there. There's this great bar downtown where all the publishing people hang out." I tuned him out. The last thing I wanted was to start dating again. I felt like I'd learned something fundamental and disturbing about myself, and I wasn't ready to inflict that on anyone else. But as the days turned into weeks, I started to feel restless. Not ready to date, exactly, but ready to do something. Make a change. Figure out who I was when I wasn't defining myself in relation to some man. I started therapy. Not because I was falling apart, but because I wanted to understand why I'd held on to that crush on Malik for so long. Why I'd let a single conversation from college become this idealized standard that no real relationship could measure up to. "Tell me about this crush," Dr. Sarah Martinez said during our 3rd session. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who specialized in relationship patterns and attachment issues. I told her about the Halloween party, about the conversation with Malik, about how I'd built an entire fantasy around that one night. "And what do you think that fantasy represented for you?" she asked. "I don't know. Perfect love, I guess? That idea that there's one person out there who just gets you completely." From a single conversation? When she put it like that, it sounded ridiculous. I guess I filled in a lot of blanks. "We often do that," Dr. Martinez said. "Especially when we're young. We take these brief, intense moments and turn them into epic love stories in our minds. It's safer than dealing with the messy reality of actual relationships." Safer how? Well, fantasy relationships never disappoint you. They never leave dirty dishes in the sink or forget your birthday or reveal that they're actually kind of boring. They stay perfect because they stay unreal. I thought about that. About how I'd never really known Malik, not his flaws, his bad habits, his everyday humanity. I'd known him for one perfect evening, and that perfection had become impossible for anyone else to compete with. "So, what do I do about it?" I asked. "You recognize it for what it was," she said. "A moment, a connection, a possibility that didn't pan out. And then you grieve it and let it go." How do I do that? By stopping the story you've been telling yourself about it. By seeing it clearly instead of romantically. It was good advice, but easier said than done. I'd been carrying this story for 3 years. It had become part of my identity, part of how I understood my own romantic history. But I started trying. When I caught myself thinking about Malik, I tried to see the situation objectively. A college student with a crush on an older student. A conversation at a party. A missed connection. Nothing more, nothing less. I also started dating myself, if that makes sense. I took myself to museums, to concerts, to restaurants I'd always wanted to try. I read more, wrote more, traveled a little. I focused on building a life that felt full and meaningful on its own, without needing someone else to complete it. Slowly, painfully, I started to heal. I thought about Jordan sometimes. Wondered how he was doing, whether he was dating anyone new. I missed him, missed his laugh, his kindness, the way he made ordinary moments feel special. But I also understood why he'd ended things. He deserved better than someone who was emotionally unavailable, even if I hadn't realized that's what I was at the time. 6 months after our breakup, I ran into Lisa at a coffee shop. "Janelle," she said, looking genuinely happy to see me. "How are you? You look great." I did look better. Therapy, regular exercise, and a new haircut had helped. But more than that, I felt more like myself than I had in a long time. "I'm good," I said and meant it. "Really good. How are you?" "Great. Listen, I've been wanting to call you, but I didn't want to be nosy." She lowered her voice. "How are you doing with the whole Jordan situation?" "I'm okay," I said. It was the right thing, ending it. We both needed to move on. "Good for you," Lisa said. "That takes maturity." We chatted for a few more minutes, catching up on work gossip and mutual friends. As we were saying goodbye, Lisa hesitated. "Can I ask you something? You don't have to answer if you don't want to." "Sure." "Was there really someone else? Another guy?" Jordan mentioned something about a past relationship that was complicated. I thought about how to answer that. "Sort of," I said finally. There was someone from my past that I hadn't completely gotten over. It wasn't fair to Jordan. Lisa nodded. "Well, for what it's worth, I think you did the right thing being honest about it. And Jordan's doing well, by the way. He's dating someone new. She seems really sweet." The news hit me with a small pang, but not the devastating blow I might have expected a few months earlier. I was happy for him. He deserved someone who could love him completely, without reservation. "I'm glad," I said, and I meant it. That night, I wrote in my journal for the first time in months. March 15th saw Lisa today. Jordan is dating someone new. I thought I'd be more upset about that, but mostly I just feel relieved. Relieved that he's moving on, that he's finding what he needs. Relieved that I was able to let him go. Dr. Martinez says I'm making progress. She says I'm learning to separate fantasy from reality, which is apparently harder than it sounds. But I think she's right. I think I'm finally starting to see the Malik situation for what it really was, a beautiful moment that I turned into a prison. I'm not dating anyone, and I'm okay with that. More than okay. I'm learning to be happy on my own, which feels revolutionary. Maybe that's what I needed all along. Not to find the right person, but to become the right person. Still miss Jordan sometimes. But I think I'm finally ready to let that go too. And I thought I was. I really thought I'd put all of this behind me, that I'd learned my lessons and moved on. Which is why what happened next caught me so completely off guard. Because sometimes, just when you think you've figured out your story, life decides to rewrite the ending. It was November again. A full year since I'd found that photograph in Jordan's nightstand drawer. A year since my life had been turned upside down by the discovery that my boyfriend and my college crush were brothers. I was in a good place. Better than good, actually. I'd been promoted at work. I was now a junior agent myself with my own small client list. I'd moved to a bigger apartment in a neighborhood I loved. I was writing again, working on a novel in my spare time. I'd even started dating, casually and without pressure. Dr. Martinez and I had reduced our sessions to once a month, more for maintenance than crisis management. I felt like I'd done the work, addressed my patterns, learned to be more present, and less caught up in fantasy. I thought about Malik rarely now, and when I did, it was without the old ache of longing. He'd become what he should have been all along, a pleasant memory from college, nothing more. I thought about Jordan sometimes too, but with a kind of grateful sadness. I was sorry for how things had ended, sorry for the pain I'd caused him, but I understood now that we'd never had a real chance. I'd been too emotionally unavailable, too caught up in my own romantic mythology to be a fair partner to anyone. The breakup, as painful as it had been, had forced me to grow up in ways I'd needed to. So, when I got the message, it felt like a cruel joke from the universe. I was at home on a Saturday evening, curled up on my couch with a book and a glass of wine. Fitzgerald was sprawled across my lap, purring contentedly. It was one of those perfect, peaceful moments that I'd learned to appreciate, the kind of contentment that doesn't need anyone else to complete it. My phone buzzed with a notification. A message from someone I didn't have in my contacts. I almost ignored it. I got a lot of random messages, work-related stuff, spam, the occasional message from someone who'd gotten my number from a mutual friend. But something made me look. Unknown number. Hi, Janelle. This is probably going to sound crazy, but this is Malik Henderson, Jordan's brother. I hope it's okay that I'm reaching out. I stared at the screen for a long moment, my brain refusing to process what I was reading. Malik. Malik was texting me. How did he even have my number? How did he know who I was? My hands were shaking as I read the rest of the message. Malik, I know this is weird and probably inappropriate, but I found out about you and Jordan and about what happened between you two. I also know that you and I met once a long time ago, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about that night since Jordan told me about it. There was more. Malik, I know this is probably the last thing you want to hear from me, but I need you to know something. I've regretted not getting your number that night for 3 years. I've thought about you more than I should have. And when Jordan told me what happened, when he told me how things ended between you two because of me, I realized I couldn't just let this go without saying something. Malik, I know the timing is terrible. I know this whole situation is complicated. But I'd really like to talk to you if you're willing. To explain, to apologize, I don't know. To see if what I remember from that night was real. Malik, if you don't want to respond, I understand. But if there's any part of you that's curious, that wonders what might have happened if things had been different, my number is below. I hope to hear from you. I must have read the messages 10 times before they fully sank in. Malik had been thinking about me. For 3 years. Just like I'd been thinking about him. Jordan had told him about us, about why we'd broken up. Which meant Malik knew that his memory had cost his brother a relationship. And now he was reaching out, asking to see me, wanting to explore what might have been. It was everything I'd fantasized about for years. The what-if was offering to become reality. So, why did I feel so conflicted about it? I set my phone down and tried to think rationally. A year ago, 6 months ago, even 3 months ago, I would have responded immediately. I would have said yes without hesitation, would have seen this as fate finally giving me what I'd always wanted. But now? Now I knew better. I knew the difference between fantasy and reality. I knew how dangerous it was to build your life around a romantic story that existed more in your imagination than in fact. And I knew what my response to Malik's message could mean for Jordan. Because whatever had happened between Jordan and me, however badly things had ended, he was still Malik's brother. If I pursued this, if I started something with Malik, Jordan would have to live with that for the rest of his life. Family dinners, holidays, weddings, I'd be there, a constant reminder of his own romantic failure. It would be cruel, unforgivably cruel. But as I sat there, staring at my phone, I also had to admit that part of me wanted to respond. Part of me was curious. Part of me still wondered what might happen if I finally had the chance to see if the connection I'd felt with Malik was real. Fitzgerald stretched and resettled on my lap, looking up at me with those knowing green eyes. "What do you think, Fitz?" I asked him. "Should I open this door?" He blinked slowly, the cat equivalent of a shrug. I picked up my phone again and reread the messages. Malik's words were careful, respectful. He wasn't pressuring me or being dramatic. He was just honest. About his regrets, about his curiosity, about the complicated nature of the situation. It was exactly the kind of mature, thoughtful approach I would have wanted from someone in his position, which somehow made it harder to dismiss. I thought about calling Dr. Martinez, but I knew what she'd say. She'd remind me about the difference between fantasy and reality. She'd point out that I was at risk of falling back into old patterns. She'd encourage me to think carefully about my motivations. All good advice. All things I knew intellectually. But the heart, I was learning, doesn't always listen to the brain. I started typing a response half a dozen times, then deleted it. What could I say? Hi, yes. I've been obsessing over you for 3 years and I'd love to see you. Thanks for reaching out, but this would destroy your brother? I'm flattered, but I've moved on. None of it felt right. Finally, I put my phone away and tried to go back to my book, but I couldn't concentrate. The words blurred on the page as my mind raced through possibilities, consequences, what-ifs. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in months. I called Jordan. I know. It was probably the last thing I should have done. But I needed to understand what had happened, how Malik had found out about us, what Jordan had told him. The phone rang 3 times before he answered. Janelle? He sounded surprised, and I realized this was the first time I'd called him since our breakup.
Hi, I said.
I hope it's okay that I'm calling. Of course it's okay. Is everything all right? His voice was kind, concerned. It reminded me of all the things I'd loved about him, all the ways he'd been good to me. I need to ask you something, I said. And I need you to be honest with me. Okay. Did you tell Malik about us? About what happened between us? There was a pause. Why are you asking? Because he contacted me, I said. Last night. He wants to see me. Jordan was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. Jordan? Are you there? Yeah, he said finally. I'm here. Did you tell him? Another pause.
Yes.
I told him. Why? Jordan sighed. It was about 6 months ago. We were at a family dinner, and my mom was asking about you. Asking why we'd broken up, if there was any chance we'd get back together. She really liked you, you know. I felt a pang at that. I'd liked his mother too. And Malik was there, Jordan continued, and he kept asking questions. About you, about what you were like, about why things ended. And I lost it. I told him everything. Everything. About your crush on him. About how you'd compared me to him. About how I felt like I was competing with a ghost. His voice was quiet. I was angry, Janelle. And hurt. And I wanted him to know what that night you two shared had cost me. I closed my eyes. Jordan, I'm so sorry. It's not your fault, he said. I chose to tell him. I needed him to understand why things ended the way they did. How did he react? He was shocked. I don't think he even remembered you at first. Not until I described the party, what you looked like. And then, Jordan paused. Then, he got very quiet. Started asking more questions. Wanted to know everything about you, about our relationship. And I realized I'd made a huge mistake. Because I could see it in his face. He was interested. Maybe had been all along, but just hadn't connected the dots. My heart was pounding. What did you tell him? I told him to stay away from you, Jordan said bluntly. I told him that you'd been through enough, that the last thing you needed was more complications from the Henderson family. But he didn't listen. Apparently not. We were both quiet for a moment. Janelle, Jordan said finally, can I ask you something? Yes. Are you going to see him? It was the same question I'd been asking myself all night. The same question I still didn't have an answer to. I don't know, I said honestly. If you do, Jordan said, and his voice was careful, controlled, I need you to know that it would make family things difficult. For all of us. I know.
Do you?
Because we're talking about holidays, weddings, grandchildren someday. If you and Malik, if this goes somewhere, I'd have to see you for the rest of my life. We'd have to find a way to be around each other. The weight of that settled over me. Would you be able to do that? Jordan was quiet for a long time. I don't know, he said finally. I'd like to think I could. But honestly,
I don't know.
After we hung up, I sat in my apartment for hours thinking. The decision I made would affect not just me, but 2 brothers, their entire family, potentially generations of family gatherings and relationships. It was too much responsibility. Too much weight for what might turn out to be nothing more than another beautiful disappointment. But as the day wore on, I found myself thinking about something Dr. Martinez had said months ago. Sometimes we avoid taking risks not because they're wrong, but because we're afraid of what we might discover about ourselves. Was I avoiding Malik because it was the right thing to do? Or because I was afraid of what I might find out? By evening, I'd made my decision. I picked up my phone and typed a careful response. Me. Hi, Malik. I remember that night, too. This is all very complicated, but I think we should talk. Are you free for coffee this week? I hit send before I could change my mind. His response came within minutes. Malik, yes. Absolutely yes. How about Tuesday afternoon? There's a coffee shop called The Daily Grind downtown. 2 p.m.? Me, I'll be there. Malik. Thank you for giving this a chance, Janelle. I know it's not easy. He was right. It wasn't easy. But maybe, I thought, the best things never are. He scanned the coffee shop, and when his eyes found mine, that same slow smile spread across his face. My heart stopped. He walked over to my table, and I stood up awkwardly, not sure if we were hugging, shaking hands, or just sitting down like civilized adults. Janelle, he said, and his voice was exactly as I remembered, rich, warm, that hint of amusement that had drawn me in all those years ago. Hi, I managed. He opened his arms slightly, a question, and I stepped into them for a brief, careful hug. He smelled like expensive cologne and something uniquely him, and for a moment I was 19 again, dizzy with possibility. Thank you for meeting me, he said as we sat down. Can I get you anything? Another coffee? I'm good, I said, gesturing to my barely touched latte. He went to the counter and ordered something, a cappuccino, I think, and I used the time to study him. 3 years had been kind to him. He moved with the same confident grace I remembered, but there was something more settled about him now. Less of the college student trying to impress everyone, more of a man comfortable with who he was. I changed my outfit 3 times before meeting Malik. First, I went with professional, a navy blazer and pencil skirt, hair pulled back in a neat bun. But I looked like I was going to a job interview, not meeting someone who might be, what? A friend? A potential romantic interest? I wasn't even sure what this was. Then I tried casual, jeans and a sweater, hair down and loose. But that felt too informal, like I wasn't taking this seriously. Finally, I settled on something in between, a nice blouse and dark jeans, light makeup, hair in a soft style that looked effortless but had actually taken me 20 minutes to achieve. You're being ridiculous, I told my reflection. It's just coffee. But we both knew it wasn't just coffee. The Daily Grind was one of those trendy downtown spots with exposed brick walls, mismatched furniture, and baristas with carefully curated facial hair. I arrived 10 minutes early and claimed a small table in the back corner, somewhere we could talk without being overheard. I ordered a latte I didn't really want and tried to calm my nerves. My palms were sweating. My heart was racing. I felt like a teenager again, nervous about meeting her crush. Get it together, Janelle, I told myself. You're a grown woman. You've been through therapy. You know the difference between fantasy and reality. But when Malik walked through the door at exactly 2 p.m., all of that rational self-talk went out the window. He was just as I remembered, but better. Older now, more filled out, more confident in his own skin. He wore a charcoal gray sweater that brought out his eyes, dark jeans that fit him perfectly. His hair was shorter than it had been in college, professionally styled, but not overly formal. He scanned the coffee shop, and when his eyes found mine, that same slow smile spread across his face. My heart stopped. He walked over to my table, and I stood up awkwardly, not sure if we were hugging, shaking hands, or just sitting down like civilized adults. Janelle, he said, and his voice was exactly as I remembered, rich, warm, that hint of amusement that had drawn me in all those years ago. Hi, I managed. He opened his arms slightly, a question, and I stepped into them for a brief, careful hug. He smelled like expensive cologne and something uniquely him, and for a moment I was 19 again, dizzy with possibility. Thank you for meeting me, he said as we sat down. Can I get you anything? Another coffee? I'm good, I said, gesturing to my barely touched latte. He went to the counter and ordered something, a cappuccino, I think, and I used the time to study him. 3 years had been kind to him. He moved with the same confident grace I remembered, but there was something more settled about him now. Less of the college student trying to impress everyone, more of a man comfortable with who he was. When he came back to the table, we looked at each other for a moment in silence. "This is surreal," he said finally. "That's one word for it," I agreed. "I have to say, you look—" He paused, considering his words. "You look exactly like I remembered, but somehow more yourself, if that makes sense." It did make sense, actually. I felt more myself than I had 3 years ago. More confident, more grounded, less desperate to be someone else. "You look good too," I said. "Success suits you." He smiled. "Thanks. Though I have to say, success feels less important than it used to." "What do you mean?" Malik leaned back in his chair, considering. "I don't know. Maybe it's getting older, but I've been thinking a lot lately about what actually matters. What makes life meaningful? And what conclusion have you come to?" "Connection," he said without hesitation. "Real connection with people. Everything else is just noise." We talked for the next hour about safe topics, work, the city, books we'd read recently. It was easy conversation, natural, like picking up a thread we'd dropped years ago. But underneath it all was this undercurrent of tension, of awareness, of all the things we weren't saying. Finally, Malik set down his coffee cup and looked at me directly. "We should probably talk about the elephant in the room," he said. "Which elephant?" "There are several." He laughed. "Fair point. Let's start with Jordan." I nodded. "How is he?" "Honestly, I think he's doing well. He's seeing someone, Sarah, her name is. She's a teacher, really sweet. They seem happy." I felt a complex mix of emotions at that news. Relief that Jordan had found someone. A tiny pang of, not jealousy exactly, but something like regret. And guilt that my presence in this coffee shop might threaten his happiness. "I'm glad," I said, and I meant it. "He deserves to be happy." "He does," Malik agreed. "Which is part of why this is so complicated." "What did he tell you? About us?" Malik was quiet for a moment. "He told me about your relationship. About how much he cared about you. And he told me about that night we met, about how you'd had feelings for me." I felt heat rise in my cheeks. It's embarrassing, hearing it said out loud. Why embarrassing? Because I built this whole fantasy around one conversation. It was pretty pathetic, actually. Was it? Malik leaned forward. Because I've been carrying around the memory of that conversation for 3 years, too. My heart skipped. Really? Really? I thought about you all the time after that party. Wondered what would have happened if I'd been braver, if I'd asked for your number. Why didn't you? He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I remembered from college. Honestly, I was intimidated. Intimidated? By me. You were so smart, so passionate about literature and life and everything. I was this business student who was probably going to end up in some corporate job, and you were this future writer with all these big dreams. I figured you were out of my league. I stared at him. That's the exact opposite of how I saw it. I thought you were this sophisticated older guy who was going places, and I was just some silly sophomore with a crush. Isn't it funny how we see ourselves versus how others see us? Malik said. I spent that whole night thinking I wasn't good enough for you, and I spent it thinking you were too good for me. We looked at each other across the table, and I could feel something shifting between us. The careful politeness was giving way to something more honest, more vulnerable. So, what happened? I asked. After that night? I looked for you, he admitted. I tried to find you on campus, asked around about you. But I didn't even know your last name, and Northwestern's not exactly small. I looked for you too. Really? Really? For months. I was convinced I'd run into you eventually. But I graduated early, Malik said. Started my job in January instead of waiting until spring. I know. Chris told Sarah, and Sarah told me. I was devastated is too strong a word, but I was really disappointed. Malik reached across the table and touched my hand briefly. I'm sorry. If I'd known. It's not your fault. The timing was just wrong. Was it? Or did we both just lack the courage to make it right? That was the question, wasn't it? How much of what happened or didn't happen was fate, and how much was fear? Can I ask you something? I said. Anything. When Jordan told you about us, about why we broke up, how did that make you feel? Malik was quiet for a long moment. Guilty, he said finally. Responsible. Like I'd ruined something good between two people I cared about. But also. He hesitated. Also, like, maybe it meant something. That after all this time, you'd still been thinking about that night. About me. And what did you do with that feeling? I tried to ignore it, he said honestly. For months. I told myself it was selfish to even think about contacting you. That you'd been through enough because of me. What changed your mind? Time, he said. And the realization that I might regret not trying more than I'd regret trying and failing. I understood that completely. Regret was a powerful motivator.
So here we are, I said.
Here we are, he agreed. Two people who've been carrying around the same memory for 3 years, finally talking about it. And now what? Malik smiled, and it was the same smile that had made me weak in the knees all those years ago. Now we find out if what we remembered was real. And if it is, then we figure out what to do about it. We talked for another hour about everything and nothing. About our jobs, our families, our dreams. About books we'd read and places we'd traveled. About the people we'd become in the years since that Halloween party. And slowly, I began to realize something that both thrilled and terrified me. The connection was real. Whatever I'd felt that night in college, whatever had drawn me to Malik, it was still there. Stronger now, more mature, but unmistakably present. He was everything I'd remembered and more. Intelligent, funny, thoughtful. But he was also real in a way my fantasy version of him had never been. He told me about his struggles at work, about the pressure he felt as the successful brother, about his failed relationships and his fears about the future. I've never been good at letting people get close, he admitted. I think I use success as a shield sometimes. If I'm impressive enough, maybe people won't notice that I'm actually kind of a mess inside. You don't seem like a mess to me, I said. That's because I'm good at hiding it, he said with a wry smile. One of my many talents. What are your other talents? Well, I make an excellent grilled cheese sandwich. I can quote most of The Princess Bride from memory. And I have an uncanny ability to find the worst possible parking spot in any given area. I laughed. Those are definitely valuable skills. Right? I'm basically a catch. The easy humor, the self-deprecation, the way he could make me laugh while also being genuinely interesting, it was intoxicating. And dangerous. Because as we sat there talking, I started to understand why Jordan had been so worried. This wasn't just about a crush or a fantasy. This was about real compatibility, real chemistry, real potential, which made it so much more complicated. As the afternoon wore on, the coffee shop began to empty out. We'd been there for almost 3 hours, and I realized I should probably go. I should head home, I said reluctantly. Of course, Malik said, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes. Thank you for this. For meeting me. For giving this a chance. Thank you for reaching out, I said. I know it wasn't easy. We walked outside together, and the Chicago wind whipped around us, making me pull my jacket tighter. Can I ask you something? Malik said, as we stood on the sidewalk.
Sure.
Would you like to do this again? Get together, I mean, maybe dinner next time? I looked at him standing there, hands in his pockets, looking hopeful and nervous and absolutely devastating in the afternoon light. I thought about Jordan, about the complications this would create, about the potential for heartbreak, mine, Malik's, Jordan's, maybe even his new girlfriend's. I thought about all the rational, mature reasons to say no. And then I thought about something else Dr. Martinez had said. Sometimes the biggest risk is not taking any risks at all. Yes, I said. I'd like that. Malik's face lit up with a smile that made my knees weak. Really? Really? Friday night? I know this great little Italian place. Friday sounds perfect. He leaned over and kissed my cheek, a soft, brief contact that sent electricity shooting through my entire body. I'll text you the details, he said. Okay. I watched him walk away, and even when he was out of sight, I stood there on the sidewalk for several more minutes, trying to process what had just happened. I'd agreed to a date with Malik Henderson, the man who'd been haunting my dreams for 3 years. The man who'd inadvertently destroyed my relationship with his brother. It was either the best decision I'd ever made or the worst. I guess I was about to find out which. I spent the entire week leading up to Friday night second-guessing myself. Was I making a huge mistake? Was I being selfish, pursuing something with Malik when I knew it would hurt Jordan? Was I falling back into old patterns, chasing a fantasy instead of dealing with reality? I called Dr. Martinez for an emergency session. I think I'm about to do something really stupid, I told her. She listened patiently as I explained about Malik's message, our coffee date, and the dinner plans for Friday. And what makes you think it's stupid? She asked when I finished. Because of Jordan. Because of the family complications. Because I might just be chasing the same fantasy I've been chasing for 3 years. Might be, she agreed. Or you might be finally giving yourself permission to explore something real. How do I tell the difference? By being honest about your motivations, she said. Are you interested in Malik because he's forbidden fruit? Because he represents this romantic story you've been telling yourself? Or are you interested in him as a person? I thought about our conversation at the coffee shop. About his humor, his vulnerability, his thoughtfulness. About how easy it had been to talk to him, how natural it had felt. As a person, I said slowly, I think I'm interested in him as a person. Then maybe this isn't about fantasy anymore, Dr. Martinez said. Maybe it's about 2 adults exploring a connection. But what about Jordan? What about him? She asked. He's moved on. He's in a new relationship. He ended things with you because he felt you weren't fully present, and he was right. But that doesn't mean you owe him a lifetime of romantic celibacy. Even with his brother? Especially with his brother, she said. Jordan doesn't get to dictate who you date. Yes, it might be uncomfortable for him. Yes, it might complicate family dynamics. But you can't live your life based on other people's potential discomfort. So, you think I should go? I think you should do what feels right for you, she said. But go into it with clear eyes. Don't expect Malik to be perfect. Don't expect this to be some magical romance that makes up for all the lost time. Just see what's actually there. It was good advice. But it didn't make the butterflies in my stomach any less active as Friday evening approached. Malik had chosen a small Italian restaurant in Little Italy called Nana's Kitchen. It was intimate without being overtly romantic. Small tables, dim lighting, the kind of place where you could have a real conversation without shouting over noise. I got there a few minutes early and was seated at a corner table. I'd chosen my outfit carefully. A black dress that was elegant but not too formal, heels that were comfortable enough to walk in, jewelry that was understated but pretty. I wanted to look nice without seeming like I was trying too hard. Malik arrived exactly on time, wearing a dark blue button-down shirt and black slacks. He looked amazing, but then again, he always looked amazing. Some people are just blessed that way. You look beautiful, he said, leaning down to kiss my cheek again. This time I was ready for the electric shock, but it still nearly knocked me over.
Thank you, I said.
You clean up pretty well yourself. I do my best, he said with that devastating smile. We ordered wine, a bottle of Chianti that Malik recommended, and spent the first part of the evening talking about lighter topics. Work, current events, a book we'd both recently read. The conversation flowed as easily as it had at the coffee shop, but there was an added layer of intimacy now. This was a date, and we both knew it. Can I ask you something? Malik said, as we were waiting for our entrees to arrive.
Sure.
What happened with Jordan? I mean, I know it was because of me, but what actually happened between you two? I took a sip of wine, buying time to think about how to answer. He found a family photo in his nightstand drawer. You were in it. I recognized you immediately. And then I told him about meeting you in college, about the crush I'd had. I paused. He didn't take it well. What did he say? I thought about that night, about Jordan's hurt and anger and accusations. He said he felt like he'd been competing with a ghost. That I'd never been fully present in our relationship because I was still hung up on you. Were you? It was the question I'd been asking myself for a year. I thought I wasn't. I said honestly. I thought I'd moved on. That what I felt for you was just a nice memory. But when Jordan asked me what I'd do if you walked into the room and said you wanted to be with me, what did you say? I didn't say anything. I couldn't answer. And that silence told him everything he needed to know. Malik was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry, he said finally. I'm sorry that what happened between us caused problems for you too. It's not your fault, I said. Jordan was right, actually. I wasn't fully present in our relationship. I was holding something back, even if I didn't realize it at the time. Do you regret it? The relationship with Jordan? I considered the question carefully. No, I said. I loved Jordan. Maybe not the way he deserved to be loved, but I did love him. And he taught me a lot about myself, about what I needed to work on. The breakup was painful, but it was probably necessary. Even if it hadn't been about me? Even then, I said, I think I would have found some way to sabotage it eventually. I wasn't ready for the kind of relationship Jordan wanted. And now I think I might be. The words hung in the air between us, loaded with implication. Janelle, Malik said, and his voice was softer now, more serious. I need you to know something. This isn't casual for me. Reaching out to you, asking you here tonight. I'm not doing this lightly. What are you doing it for? Because I think you might be someone I could fall in love with, he said simply. Because I think we might have something real. And because I'm tired of wondering what if. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. That's a lot of pressure for first date.
I know. I'm sorry.
I'm usually much smoother than this. I like that you're not being smooth, I said. I like that you're being honest. So where does that leave us? I don't know, I admitted. This is all so complicated. It doesn't have to be, Malik said. We're two adults who are attracted to each other. We have a connection. We want to see where it leads. Everything else is just noise. Jordan isn't noise. No, Malik agreed. Jordan isn't noise. Jordan is my brother, and I love him. But Jordan also broke up with you a year ago and is now in a serious relationship with someone else. He doesn't get a vote in this. His girlfriend doesn't know about me, I pointed out. What happens when she finds out that her boyfriend's brother is dating his ex? The ex who broke up their relationship. Then we deal with that when it happens, Malik said. We can't make decisions based on other people's hypothetical reactions. He reached across the table and took my hand. His fingers were warm, strong, familiar even though we'd barely touched. Janelle, he said, I've spent 3 years thinking about you. 3 years wondering what might have happened if I'd been braver that night in college. I don't want to spend the next 3 years wondering what might have happened if I'd been braver tonight. I looked down at our joined hands, then back up at his face. He was looking at me with such intensity, such hope, that it took my breath away. What are you asking me? I'm asking you to take a chance on this. On us. I'm asking you to let me take you on real dates, to get to know you properly, to see if what we both felt all those years ago can become something real. And if it doesn't work out? Then at least we'll know, he said. At least we won't have to wonder anymore. The server came by to refill our wine glasses, and I used the interruption to think. Everything Malik was saying made sense. We were adults. We had a connection. We deserved to explore it. But I also knew that once we crossed this line, there would be no going back. Once we became a real couple, the complications would multiply exponentially. Okay, I said finally. Okay, let's do this. Let's see what happens. Malik's face broke into the most beautiful smile I'd ever seen. Really? Really?
But we do this right.
We take it slow, we're honest with each other, and we don't make any promises we can't keep. Deal, he said immediately. Although I should warn you, I'm a pretty good boyfriend when I put my mind to it. We'll see about that, I said, but I was smiling too. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur of good food, great wine, and even better conversation. Malik told me stories about his work, his travels, his family. I told him about my writing, my dreams, my fears. By the time we finished dessert, I felt like I was seeing him clearly for the first time, not as a fantasy or a memory, but as a real person with depths and complexities and flaws. And I liked what I saw. A lot. When we left the restaurant, Malik walked me to my car. I had an amazing time tonight, he said. Me too, I admitted. Can I see you again? Soon. How soon? Tomorrow, he said hopefully. I laughed. Tomorrow might be a little eager. Sunday then. We could go to that art museum you mentioned. Make fun of pretentious installations and debate the meaning of abstract expressionism. That actually sounds perfect, I said. Good. It's a date. We stood there for a moment, and I could feel the tension building between us. The question of whether he was going to kiss me, whether I wanted him to, what it would mean if he did. Janelle, he said softly, stepping closer. Yeah, I'm going to kiss you now, if that's okay. That's okay, I whispered. And then his lips were on mine, soft and warm and perfect. It was nothing like the desperate, passionate kiss I'd imagined all those years ago. It was better, real, present, full of promise for what might come next. When we broke apart, I was breathless. Wow, I said. Wow indeed, Malik agreed, resting his forehead against mine. I drove home in a daze, my lips still tingling, my heart still racing. I felt like a teenager again, giddy and hopeful and terrified all at once. When I got to my apartment, I called my sister. I said when she answered, I think I'm in trouble. Good trouble or bad trouble? I have no idea, I said. But I think I'm falling for someone. Tell me everything, she demanded. And I did. I told her about Malik, about our history, about Jordan, about the complications and the possibilities, and the way my heart had felt like it might burst out of my chest when he kissed me. Sounds like you've got it bad, Emily said when I finished. I do, I admitted. And I have no idea what I'm doing. Nobody ever does, she said pragmatically. But that's what makes it exciting, right? Or terrifying. Same thing, really. After we hung up, I sat on my couch with Fitzgerald in my lap, trying to process everything that had happened. I was dating Malik Henderson. Actually dating him. The man who'd been my what-if for 3 years was now my reality. It was everything I'd dreamed of, and nothing like I'd expected. More complicated, more uncertain, but also more real. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see what came next. The next few months were some of the happiest of my adult life. Malik and I fell into a relationship with surprising ease. We had dinner dates, museum visits, long walks along the lakefront. We texted constantly throughout the day, funny observations, book recommendations, photos of interesting things we'd seen. He sent me flowers at work for no reason other than he'd seen them and thought of me. Someone's got it bad, my co-worker Marcus observed, watching me arrange the bouquet of sunflowers Malik had sent. Maybe, I said, trying to hide my smile. Maybe nothing. You're glowing. It's disgusting. But I was glowing. For the first time in years, I felt completely present in a relationship. There were no ghosts, no fantasies, no wondering about what might have been with someone else. Malik was right there, real and tangible and wonderful. He was everything I'd imagined, and so much more. Intelligent and funny, yes, but also thoughtful in ways I hadn't expected. He remembered details about my work, asked about my writing, encouraged my dreams. When I had a panic attack about submitting my novel to agents, he sat with me and helped me craft query letters. You're brilliant, he said, reading over my manuscript. This is going to be published, and I'm going to tell everyone I know that I'm dating a famous author. It's not even finished yet, I protested. It will be. And it'll be amazing. His confidence in me was intoxicating. So was his gentleness. When I was sick with the flu, he brought me soup and sat with me while I napped. When I had a terrible day at work, he listened to me vent and then distracted me with terrible movies and better wine. You're really good at this, I told him one evening as we were cooking dinner together in his apartment. At what? At being a boyfriend. He grinned. I told you I was when I put my mind to it. And he was. Attentive without being clingy, romantic without being cheesy, supportive without being patronizing. He was exactly the kind of partner I'd always hoped to find. The physical chemistry between us was incredible too. That first kiss had been just the beginning. Every touch was electric. Every moment of intimacy felt both familiar and brand new. It was like we'd been made for each other. I've never felt anything like this before, I told him one night as we lay in bed together, my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Neither have I, he said, stroking my hair. It's kind of terrifying. Good terrifying or bad terrifying? The best kind of terrifying, he said, pressing a kiss to the top of my head. We were falling in love, and we both knew it. The only shadow over our happiness was the specter of Jordan and the family complications we were both trying not to think about. Malik hadn't told his family about us yet. Neither had I told mine beyond my sister. We were existing in this beautiful bubble where it was just the two of us, where the outside world and its judgments couldn't touch us. But bubbles, by their very nature, are fragile things. The first crack came about 3 months into our relationship. We were at Malik's apartment, having breakfast on a lazy Saturday morning, when his phone rang. He glanced at it and frowned. "It's my mom," he said. "I should probably take this." I nodded, continuing to read the newspaper while he answered. "Hi, Mom," he said, walking into the kitchen for privacy. But his apartment wasn't that big, and I could hear bits of the conversation. "Yeah, I know it's been a while since I've been over for dinner." "No, I'm not avoiding you. I've just been busy with work."
There was a long pause, then,
"Actually, Mom, there's something I need to tell you. I'm seeing someone. Her name is Janelle." Another pause, longer this time.
"What?"
"No, Mom, it's not the same Janelle. Well, actually, I looked up from my newspaper, my stomach sinking."
"It's complicated," Malik was saying.
"Can we talk about this when I come over for dinner tomorrow?" He hung up the phone and came back to the living room, looking stressed. "Everything okay?" I asked, though I could guess what had happened. "My mom knows about you," he said. "About you and Jordan. Jordan told her when you two broke up, remember? So, when I said I was dating someone named Janelle, she put 2 and 2 together. Yeah, she wants to meet you. Tomorrow. At family dinner." My heart sank. Tomorrow? I know it's soon. And I know it's going to be awkward. But she's not going to let this go. I thought about meeting Malik's parents, about sitting around their dinner table knowing that I was the woman who'd broken their youngest son's heart. About the questions they'd ask, the judgments they'd make. "What if they hate me?" I asked. "They won't hate you," Malik said, sitting down next to me on the couch. "They might be confused or concerned, but they won't hate you." "What if Jordan's there?" "He won't be. Sunday dinners are usually just my parents and whoever's available. Jordan doesn't come every week." "But what if he does?" Malik took my hands in his. "Then we deal with it. Together." "I don't know if I'm ready for this," I admitted. "I don't know if I am either," he said. "But we can't hide forever." He was right, of course. We'd known this day would come eventually. We'd just been hoping for more time. "Okay," I said finally. "But if this goes badly, I'm blaming you." "Fair enough," he said, pulling me into his arms. "Although for the record, I think you're going to charm them completely. We'll see about that." That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. What if his parents refused to accept me? What if they demanded that Malik choose between me and his family? What if Jordan showed up and caused a scene? What if I wasn't strong enough to handle whatever was coming? "You're overthinking this," Malik said, sensing my restlessness. "Probably," I agreed. "But that's what I do." "It's going to be fine," he said, pulling me closer. "We're going to walk in there together, we're going to be honest about our relationship, and we're going to deal with whatever reaction we get. And if they ask me to leave, then we leave," he said simply. "Together." The certainty in his voice, the way he said we like it was the most natural thing in the world, made me feel a little better. Whatever happened tomorrow, at least I wouldn't be facing it alone. But as I finally drifted off to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that our beautiful bubble was about to burst, and I had no idea what would be left when it did. The Henderson family home was exactly what I'd expected, a large colonial in an upscale suburb with a perfectly manicured lawn and a circular driveway. It looked like the kind of house where happy families gathered for holidays and birthdays, where childhood memories were made and treasured. I felt like an intruder. "You're shaking," Malik observed as we sat in his car outside the house. I'm terrified, I admitted. Of my parents? Of disappointing them? Of being the woman who caused problems in their family? Malik turned off the engine and took my hand.
Hey.
Look at me. I met his eyes. You are not responsible for Jordan's feelings, he said firmly. You are not the villain in this story. You followed your heart, and that's never wrong. But what if? No what-ifs, he interrupted gently. We've spent enough time living in what-ifs. Today is about what is.
He was right.
I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and nodded. Okay, let's do this. The front door opened before we even reached it. A woman in her 50s appeared, clearly Malik's mother, with the same warm brown eyes and elegant bone structure. She was smaller than I'd expected, wearing a floral apron over dark slacks and a cream sweater. You must be Janelle, she said, and her voice was cautious but not unkind. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for having me. I'm Patricia. Please come in. The house smelled like roast beef and fresh bread. Family photos lined the hallway walls, school pictures, graduation shots, family vacations. I caught glimpses of Jordan and Malik at various ages, gap-toothed grins and awkward teenage phases. There was an edge to his words, but not malicious. Just careful.
Dad, Malik warned.
It's okay, I said. I'm sure this is all very confusing. That's one word for it, Robert said, settling back into his chair. My wife tells me you used to date Jordan. Yes, sir. For about 8 months. And now you're dating Malik. Yes, sir. Robert nodded slowly. Well, that's something. Patricia appeared in the doorway. Dinner's ready. Shall we? The dining room table was set for 4 with a kind of china that suggested this was a special occasion. Or maybe just Sunday dinner in a family that still valued traditions. The first part of the meal passed in stilted small talk. The weather, my job, Malik's work. Safe topics that skirted around the elephant in the room. Finally, Patricia set down her fork and looked at me directly. I need to ask you something, dear, she said. And I hope you'll forgive an old woman's bluntness. Of course. Are you in love with my son? The question hit me like a physical blow. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because saying it out loud, in front of his parents, made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Yes, I said quietly. I am. Which son? The room went silent. Even the grandfather clock in the corner seemed to stop ticking. Malik, I said, meeting her eyes. I'm in love with Malik. Patricia studied my face for a long moment. And what about Jordan? I cared about Jordan very much, I said carefully. But what I felt for him, it wasn't the same as what I feel for Malik. Because you were pining for Malik the whole time? Robert asked. I felt heat rise in my cheeks. It's more complicated than that. Is it? Patricia asked. Because from where we're sitting, it looks like you dated one son while wanting the other, and now that the other is available, you've moved on. Mom, Malik said sharply. That's not fair. Isn't it? Robert asked. Son, Jordan was devastated when they broke up. Devastated. It took him months to get back on his feet. And now you're dating the woman who broke his heart. Jordan broke up with me, I said, finding my voice. And he was right too. I wasn't ready for the kind of relationship he wanted. I was still figuring out who I was and what I needed. And you've figured that out now? Patricia asked. I think so. Yes. Convenient timing, Robert muttered.
Dad, stop, Malik said.
You're being unfair to Janelle. Am I? Or am I protecting my family? The tension in the room was suffocating. I could feel tears burning behind my eyes, but I refused to cry.
Not here, not in front of them.
I understand why you're concerned, I said, standing up. And I understand why you might not trust me. But I want you to know that I never intended for any of this to happen. I never wanted to hurt Jordan, and I certainly never planned to fall in love with Malik. But you did, Patricia said. Yes, I did.
And I won't apologize for that.
Love isn't something you can control or plan or make convenient for everyone else. I turned to Malik. I should go. This was a mistake. Janelle, wait.
No, it's okay. They're protecting their family. I understand that. I started toward the door, but Patricia's voice stopped me. Sit down, dear. I turned back to her, surprised by the gentleness in her tone. Please. Sit down. I hesitated, then returned to my chair. Patricia looked at her husband, some silent communication passing between them. Then she turned back to me. I apologize, she said. We've been rude, and that's not who we are. Patricia, Robert started. No, Robert. She's right. Love isn't convenient. It doesn't follow the rules we'd like it to. She looked at me again. But you have to understand, Jordan is our baby. Watching him hurt, it nearly broke my heart. I know, I said softly. It broke mine too. Did it? Because you seem to have moved on pretty quickly. I spent a year in therapy, I said. A year figuring out why I couldn't commit to Jordan, why I was always holding something back. And yes, part of that was because I had unresolved feelings for Malik. But it was also because I didn't know how to be in a healthy relationship. And you do now. I looked at Malik, who was watching me with such love and support that it made my chest tight. I'm learning, I said. Every day. Patricia nodded slowly. And Malik? How do you feel about all this? I'm in love with her, Mom, he said simply. Completely, totally in love with her. And I know the timing is complicated, I know it creates problems, but I can't help that. And Jordan is my brother and I love him. But he's also moved on. He's happy with Sarah. This doesn't have to affect his life at all unless we let it. Robert snorted. You think he's not going to care that his brother is dating his ex-girlfriend? I think Jordan is mature enough to understand that sometimes life is messy, Malik said. And I think he'd rather see us both happy than see us both miserable for the sake of avoiding awkwardness. You might be surprised, Robert said darkly. What does that mean? I asked. Patricia and Robert exchanged another look. Jordan doesn't know yet, Patricia said finally. About you two. My heart sank. He doesn't. We wanted to meet you first, Robert said. To understand what this was before we told him. And what do you think it is? Malik asked. I think, Patricia said slowly, that it's real. I can see it in how you look at each other, how you talk about each other. But I also think it's going to break Jordan's heart. Why? I asked. He's moved on. He's with someone else. Because, Robert said, Sarah left him last week. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? They broke up, Patricia said gently. Something about her not feeling like he was fully committed to the relationship. Sound familiar? I felt like I was going to be sick. He never mentioned. Why would he? Robert asked. You two don't exactly keep in touch. Malik looked stricken. Dad, why didn't you tell me? Because you've been so wrapped up in your new relationship that you haven't called your brother in weeks, Robert said sharply. When's the last time you talked to Jordan? Really talked to him? Malik was quiet, and I could see the guilt washing over his face. This changes things, I said quietly. Does it? Patricia asked. Why? Because. I struggled to find the words. Because if Jordan is single, if he's hurting, then us being together feels cruel. Or, Malik said, it means the timing finally worked out for all of us. Everyone stared at him. Think about it, he continued. Jordan and Sarah broke up because he wasn't fully committed. Maybe that's because he still had feelings for Janelle. Maybe this whole thing needs to be resolved once and for all. You're suggesting what exactly? Robert asked. I'm suggesting we tell Jordan the truth. All of it. And let him decide how he feels about it. That's a terrible idea, I said immediately. Why? Because what if he's not over me? What if seeing us together destroys him? Then we deal with that, Malik said. But we can't make decisions based on what Jordan might feel. We can only be honest and let him choose how to react. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. He's coming for dinner next Sunday, she said finally. What? Malik and I said simultaneously. Jordan. He's coming for dinner next Sunday. To talk about the breakup with Sarah. To get some support. She looked between us. I think that would be a good time for this conversation. Mom, no, Malik said. That's not fair to any of us. Life isn't fair, sweetheart, Patricia said. But hiding from difficult conversations doesn't make them go away. I can't, I said, panic rising in my chest. I can't sit at a family dinner and tell Jordan that I'm dating his brother. Not when he's already hurting. Then when? Robert asked. When will it ever be convenient? When will it ever not be complicated? He was right, and I hated him for it. I need to think about this, I said, standing up again. Janelle, Malik started. No, I really need to think. I shook my head. This is bigger than I thought. I walked to the door, my mind spinning. Behind me, I could hear Malik apologizing to his parents, could hear the low murmur of their voices as they discussed what to do next. Outside, I sat in Malik's car and called my sister. I think I'm in over my head. What happened?
I told her everything.
About dinner, about Jordan's breakup, about next Sunday's inevitable confrontation. Shit, Emily said when I finished. That's really complicated, right? What do I do? I don't know, Janelle. What do you want to do? I want to run away and never deal with any of this. That's not really an option. I know. Emily was quiet for a moment. Can I ask you something?
Sure.
Do you really love Malik? Like, really, truly love him? Not just the idea of him, not just because he was forbidden fruit, but actually love who he is as a person. I thought about the past 3 months. About lazy Sunday mornings and late-night conversations. About the way Malik made me laugh, the way he supported my dreams, the way he made me feel like the best version of myself. Yes, I said. I really love him. Then fight for it, Emily said simply. Stop running from difficult conversations. Stop letting other people's feelings dictate your choices. If you love him, and he loves you, then figure out how to make it work. Even if it hurts Jordan? Jordan is a grown man who ended his relationship with you a year ago. He doesn't get to dictate your romantic future. When Malik came out to the car 20 minutes later, I was calmer but no less conflicted. How bad was it after I left? I asked. Not great, he admitted, starting the car. But not as bad as it could have been. Do they hate me?
No.
They're concerned, and they're protective of Jordan, but they don't hate you. He pulled out of the driveway. My mom actually said she thought you handled yourself well. Really? Really? She said you were honest and straightforward, and she appreciated that. We drove in silence for a while. Malik, I said finally. Are you sure about this? About us? What do you mean? I mean, is this worth potentially damaging your relationship with your brother? With your family? He pulled over to the side of the road and turned to face me. Janelle, I love you. I love you more than I've ever loved anyone. And yes, I love my brother too, and I don't want to hurt him. But I can't live my life based on what might hurt Jordan. I can't give up the best thing that's ever happened to me because it might be uncomfortable for someone else. Even if that someone else is your brother? Especially because it's my brother. Because Jordan, more than anyone, should want me to be happy. I looked at his face, at the determination and love I saw there, and I made my decision. Okay, I said. Next Sunday. We'll tell him together. Are you sure?
No.
But I'm sure about you. About us. And that has to be enough. The week leading up to Sunday dinner was excruciating. Malik and I barely saw each other, not because we didn't want to, but because we were both too anxious to be good company. Every conversation felt stilted, weighed down by what was coming. I threw myself into work, staying late at the office, taking on extra projects. Anything to keep my mind off the approaching confrontation. You look terrible, Marcus observed on Thursday afternoon. Thanks for the pep talk. Seriously, what's going on with you? You've been a mess all week. I considered telling him, but the whole situation was too complicated to explain. Just some personal stuff, I said. Want to talk about it? Not really. Okay, but for what it's worth, whatever it is, it'll work out. It always does. I wished I shared his confidence. Friday evening, Malik came over with takeout and wine. We tried to have a normal night, dinner, a movie, casual conversation, but the elephant in the room was too big to ignore. Are you having second thoughts? He asked as we were cleaning up. About us?
No. About Sunday?
Every 5 minutes. We could postpone it, he said. Tell my parents we need more time.
No.
Your dad was right. There's never going to be a convenient time for this conversation. Might as well get it over with. It's going to be okay, Malik said, pulling me into his arms. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. What if he hates me? He won't hate you. What if he hates you? Then I'll have to live with that, Malik said quietly. But I'd rather have his anger than his pity. Saturday night, I barely slept. Sunday morning, I changed my outfit 4 times before settling on something that looked respectful but not apologetic, a navy dress with a cardigan, minimal jewelry, low heels. You look beautiful, Malik said when he picked me up. I looked terrified. That too. But it's a good look on you. Despite everything, I smiled. How are you so calm about this? I'm not calm. I'm just good at pretending. The Henderson house looked exactly the same as it had the week before, but somehow more ominous. We sat in the car for a few minutes, gathering courage. Last chance to run away and join the circus, Malik said. Don't tempt me. Ready?
No.
But let's do it anyway. Patricia answered the door with a tight smile. Janelle, Malik. Come in. We followed her to the living room, where Robert was reading the newspaper. No sign of Jordan yet. He should be here any minute, Patricia said, as if reading my mind. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water? I'm fine, thank you, I said, though my mouth felt like sandpaper. Mom, Malik said, have you told him that we're going to be here? I told him you were bringing someone special, Patricia said. I didn't specify who. My stomach dropped. So, this is going to be a complete surprise. I thought it would be better that way. Less time for him to worry about it in advance. Or less time for him to prepare himself, Robert added grimly. The front door opened, and my heart stopped. Mom? Dad? I'm here, Jordan's voice called from the entryway. In the living room, sweetheart, Patricia called back. Footsteps approached. I gripped Malik's hand so tightly I was probably cutting off his circulation. Jordan appeared in the doorway, and the sight of him hit me like a physical blow. He looked thinner than I remembered, older. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his usual easy smile was nowhere to be found. When he saw us, he stopped dead. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The only sound was the ticking of that grandfather clock. What the hell is this? Jordan said finally, his voice flat. Jordan, Patricia started. Please sit down.
No.
His eyes moved between Malik and me, taking in our joined hands, our positioning on the couch. No, I'm not sitting down. I want to know what the hell is going on. Jordan, Malik said, standing up, we need to talk. We need to talk. Jordan's voice was rising. We need to talk. How about we needed to talk 3 months ago when you started dating my ex-girlfriend behind my back? It wasn't behind your back, wasn't it? When exactly were you planning to tell me, Malik? At my wedding? At your funeral? Jordan, please, I said, standing up too. Let us explain. Explain? Jordan laughed, but there was no humor in it. What's to explain? You dumped me because you were hung up on my brother, and now you're with my brother. Seems pretty straightforward. It's not that simple, I said. Isn't it? Jordan turned to face me fully, and I could see the pain in his eyes. You know what the funny thing is, Janelle? I actually thought you might have been right. About us, about not being ready. I thought maybe the breakup was a good thing. Jordan. I'm not finished. His voice was cold, controlled. I thought maybe you'd help me see that I was settling. That I deserved someone who was completely sure about me. So I tried to move on. I dated Sarah. I tried to build something real with her. My heart sank. I could see where this was going. But you know what? I couldn't. Because every time I was with her, I kept thinking about you. About us. About whether I'd given up too easily. He looked at Malik. And while I was wrestling with that, while I was wondering if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life, my brother was swooping in to pick up the pieces. That's not what happened, Malik said firmly. No? Then what did happen? I contacted her, Malik said. After you told me about your breakup, about what had happened. I contacted her because I couldn't stop thinking about her either. How noble of you. Jordan, stop, Patricia said. This isn't helping anyone. Oh, I'm sorry, Mom. Am I not handling this well? Because I have to say, finding out that my brother is dating my ex-girlfriend at what I thought was going to be a supportive family dinner is a little overwhelming. We should have told you sooner, I said. We know that. But we didn't know how. How about with honesty? Jordan snapped. How about with a phone call? How about with some basic respect for the fact that we used to be together? You're right, I said quietly. We handled this badly. I'm sorry. You're sorry. Jordan shook his head. That makes it all better. Jordan, Malik said, I know you're angry. Angry? Jordan's composure finally cracked. I'm not angry, Malik. I'm devastated. I'm humiliated. I'm sitting here looking at the two people I trusted most in the world, and I'm realizing that neither of you gave a damn about my feelings. That's not true, I said, tears starting to fall. I care about your feelings. So much. That's why this has been so hard. Has it been hard? Because you both look pretty happy to me. We're happy, Malik said. And I'm not going to apologize for that. Malik, Robert warned.
No, Dad.
I'm not going to stand here and pretend I'm ashamed of loving Janelle. Yes, the timing is complicated. Yes, it creates an awkward situation. But I'm not going to give up the best thing in my life because it makes other people uncomfortable. The best thing in your life? Jordan's voice was deadly quiet. She's the best thing in your life? Yes. Even though she's the woman who destroyed me? She didn't destroy you, Jordan. Your relationship ended because it wasn't right for either of you. According to who? According to her? According to you. Jordan's voice was getting louder again. Maybe our relationship could have worked if she hadn't been pining for you the whole time. Maybe, Malik agreed. But that's not what happened. What happened is that two people who weren't right for each other figured that out and ended it. And now two people who are right for each other have found each other. How convenient. It wasn't convenient. It was terrifying. Do you think this was easy for us? Do you think we wanted to hurt you? I don't know what you wanted, Jordan said. I don't think I know either of you at all. The words hung in the air like a slap. Jordan, I said softly, I know this is awful. I know it's painful and messy and unfair. But I need you to know that what Malik and I have, it's real. It's not some rebound or some way of getting back at you. We fell in love. You fell in love. Jordan's voice was flat again. How nice for you. I also need you to know that I never meant to hurt you. Not during our relationship and not now. But you did hurt me. Both of you did. I know. And I'm sorry. Jordan looked between us for a long moment. Are you going to marry him? The question caught me off guard. We haven't. It's too early to talk about that. But you could see it happening. I looked at Malik, saw the love and certainty in his eyes. Yes, I said quietly. I could see it happening. Jordan nodded slowly. Well, then, I guess congratulations are in order. Jordan, Patricia said, you don't have to. Don't I? Jordan looked around the room. This is my family. These are the people I'm going to be stuck seeing at holidays and birthdays and family gatherings for the rest of my life. Might as well start getting used to it. It doesn't have to be like this, Malik said. Doesn't it? What did you think was going to happen, Malik? That I'd be happy for you? That I'd welcome her into the family with open arms? I hoped that eventually you might understand. Understand what? That you fell in love with my ex-girlfriend? That she fell in love with you? That I was just the practice round before the real thing came along. That's not what this is, I said desperately. Isn't it? Jordan turned to me. Be honest, Janelle. If you'd met Malik first, if you'd had the chance to be with him from the beginning, would you have even looked at me? The question hit me like a physical blow because I knew the answer, and I knew he could see it in my face. That's what I thought, Jordan said quietly. Jordan, please, I said, reaching toward him. He stepped back. Don't. Just don't. He turned to leave, then stopped. For what it's worth, he said without turning around, I hope you're happy. I hope this works out for you. But I can't be around it. I can't watch you build a life with my brother when I'm still trying to figure out how to live without you. Jordan, Malik started. I need some time, Jordan said. I don't know how much time. Maybe a lot. But I can't do family dinners and holidays and pretending everything is okay when it's not. You're choosing to cut yourself off from your family? Robert asked, his voice horrified. I'm choosing to protect myself, Jordan said. There's a difference. He walked to the door, then paused one more time. Take care of each other, he said without looking back. And try to remember that your happiness came at the cost of someone else's. And then he was gone. The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia was crying quietly. Robert was staring at the floor. Malik was standing frozen in the middle of the room. And I was wondering if loving someone was supposed to hurt this much. The drive home from the Henderson house was the longest 20 minutes of my life. Neither Malik nor I spoke. What was there to say? That it had gone even worse than we'd expected? That Jordan's pain had been more devastating to witness than we'd imagined? When we got to my apartment, we sat on my couch in silence for a long time. Fitzgerald jumped onto my lap, seeming to sense that I needed comfort. I've never seen him like that, Malik said finally. Jordan has always been the easygoing one, the peacemaker. I've never seen him so broken, I finished.
Yeah.
This is my fault, I said quietly. No, it's not. Isn't it? If I'd handled things differently with Jordan in the first place, if I'd been honest about my feelings from the beginning, then what? You would have stayed in a relationship you weren't fully committed to? That wouldn't have been fair to either of you. But at least he wouldn't be hurting like this now. Malik turned to face me fully. Janelle, Jordan was always going to get hurt, either when you broke up originally, or later when he realized you weren't completely there. The timing might have been different, but the pain was inevitable. Was it? Or did we make it worse by getting together? I don't know, Malik admitted. Maybe. But I can't regret falling in love with you. Even after seeing Jordan like that? Especially after seeing Jordan like that. Because now I understand what it feels like to love someone so completely that the thought of losing them is unbearable. I looked at him, this man I'd fallen so hard for, and felt my heart breaking and healing at the same time. What do we do now? I asked. We give him time. We give him space. And we try to live our lives without constantly looking over our shoulders. What if he never forgives us? Then we'll have to live with that, Malik said quietly. But we can't put our relationship on hold indefinitely waiting for Jordan's blessing. That night, I lay awake thinking about everything that had happened. About the look on Jordan's face when he realized what was going on. About the way his voice had broken when he said he was still trying to figure out how to live without me. Had I made the right choice? Was love enough to justify the pain we'd caused? The next few weeks passed in a strange sort of limbo. Malik and I continued seeing each other, but the joy had gone out of our relationship. Every moment of happiness was tainted by guilt over Jordan's pain. Malik's parents called occasionally, updating us on Jordan's state of mind. He was seeing a therapist. He'd taken some time off work. He wasn't returning calls from friends or family. He'll come around, Patricia said during one particularly difficult phone call. He just needs time to process. But as the weeks turned into months, I began to wonder if that was true. Meanwhile, my own family was starting to ask questions. You seem different, my mother said during our weekly phone call. Distracted. Are you okay? I gave her vague answers about work stress and city life, but I could tell she wasn't buying it. Janelle, she said finally, I know when you're hiding something. What's going on? So I told her. Everything. About Malik, about Jordan, about the family dinner from hell. Oh, honey, she said when I finished. That's really complicated. Tell me something I don't know. Are you happy with this Malik? I thought about it. When I'm not feeling guilty.
Yes.
Incredibly happy. And you really love him? More than I've ever loved anyone. Then stop feeling guilty, my mother said firmly. Life is messy, sweetheart. Love is messy. You can't control who you fall for or when it happens. But Jordan Jordan is a grown man who will heal from this. It might take time, but he'll heal. Don't sacrifice your happiness for his comfort. It was good advice, but easier said than followed. 3 months after that awful Sunday dinner, everything changed again. I was at work, reading through submissions when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Patricia Henderson's number. Mrs. Henderson? I answered, surprised. We'd barely spoken since that night. Janelle, dear, she said, and I could hear the excitement in her voice. I have news. What kind of news? Jordan called. He wants to see you and Malik. Together. My heart stopped. He does. He said he's ready to talk. Really talk. He wants you both to come to dinner on Sunday. Are you sure? Because if he's not ready... He's ready, Patricia said firmly. He sounded different. Calmer. More like himself. What changed? I don't know. But he specifically asked me to call you both. He said it was time to sort this out. After I hung up, I called Malik immediately. He wants to see us, I said without preamble. Jordan. Sunday dinner. Your mom says he's ready to talk. There was a long pause. How do you feel about that? Terrified, I admitted. But also hopeful. Maybe we can finally put this behind us. Or maybe it'll be worse than last time. There's only one way to find out. That Sunday, we drove to the Henderson house for the 3rd time, but this time felt different. There was nervous energy in the air, but also something that felt like possibility. Jordan's car was already in the driveway when we arrived. He's here, I said unnecessarily. Yep. Ready? Nope. Me neither. Let's go. Patricia answered the door with a genuine smile this time. Come in, come in. Jordan's in the living room. We walked in to find Jordan sitting in his father's usual chair, looking more like himself than he had in months. He'd gained back some weight, and the haunted look in his eyes was gone. Janelle. Malik, he said, standing up. Thank you for coming. Thank you for asking us to, I said carefully. Please sit down. We have a lot to talk about. The next hour was one of the most difficult and healing conversations of my life. Jordan talked about his anger, his pain, his sense of betrayal. But he also talked about his therapy, about the realizations he'd had, about the work he'd been doing to understand his own patterns and reactions. I realized something, he said at one point. I wasn't angry at you for not loving me enough. I was angry at myself for not being someone you could love completely. Jordan, that's not... I started. Let me finish, he said gently. I spent our entire relationship trying to be enough for you. Trying to be the kind of man who could make you forget about everyone else. But you can't force someone to love you the way you want to be loved. I did love you, I said softly. I know, but not the way I needed you to. And that's not your fault. It's just incompatibility. He turned to Malik. And I realized something else. I was angry at you for getting what I couldn't have. But the truth is, you're not getting what I had. You're getting something completely different. What do you mean? Malik asked. Janelle with me was someone who was trying to be in love. Janelle with you is someone who actually is in love. Those are two completely different people. I felt tears starting to fall. Jordan, I'm not saying this to hurt anyone, he continued. I'm saying it because it's true. And because I finally understand that what you two have isn't about me at all. It's about you finding each other at the right time in the right way. Malik reached over and took my hand. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Jordan said. But I need to say something to both of you. He took a deep breath. I'm sorry for how I reacted, for the things I said, for making this about my pain instead of about your happiness. You didn't deserve that. You had every right to be angry, I said. Maybe. But I didn't have the right to punish you for falling in love. We talked for another hour, working through the hurt and misunderstanding, finding our way back to something that felt like family. It wasn't easy and it wasn't perfect, but it was real. Can I ask you something? Jordan said, as we were getting ready to leave. Of course, I said. Are you happy? Really, truly happy? I looked at Malik, at this man who had become my entire world, and smiled.
Yes.
I am. Good, Jordan said, and he meant it. That's all I ever wanted for you. Chapter 14. The Wedding. 2 years later, I stood in the bridal suite of a small chapel outside Chicago, staring at myself in the mirror and trying to believe this was really happening. The dress was simple but elegant, ivory silk with delicate lace sleeves, a style that felt timeless rather than trendy. My hair was swept up in a soft chignon, with a few loose curls framing my face. My grandmother's pearl earrings completed the look. "You look beautiful," Emily said, adjusting my veil for the 10th time. She was my maid of honor, and she'd been fussing over me all morning. "I look terrified," I said. "That too, but in a good way." Through the window, I could see guests arriving. Malik's college friends, my co-workers, aunts and uncles and cousins I hadn't seen in years. It was a small wedding, only about 50 people, but it felt perfect. 5 minutes, the wedding coordinator announced, poking her head into the room. My stomach flipped. "I think I'm going to be sick." "No, you're not," Emily said firmly. "You're going to walk down that aisle and marry the man you love. The man who makes you laugh every single day, who supports your dreams, who loves you exactly as you are." She was right. In the 2 years since that awful family dinner, Malik and I had built something beautiful together. We'd moved in together, adopted a dog named Scout to keep Fitzgerald company, traveled to places we'd always dreamed of seeing. We'd weathered fights and stress and all the ordinary challenges that come with building a life with another person. And through it all, we'd only grown more certain that we belonged together. Malik had proposed 6 months ago, on the anniversary of our first coffee date. Nothing dramatic or flashy, just the two of us in our apartment, surrounded by the life we'd created together. "I know this is crazy," he'd said, getting down on one knee in our living room. "I know we've only been together for 2 years, and I know our beginning was complicated. But I also know that I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" The ring was perfect, a simple solitaire, elegant and classic. Just like him. "Yes," I'd said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Of course, yes." Now, standing in this bridal suite, I could hardly believe we'd made it here. "Ready?" Emily asked. I took a deep breath and nodded. "Ready." The ceremony was everything I'd dreamed of. Malik looked incredible in his dark suit, standing at the altar with his best man, his college roommate Chris, the same Chris who had inadvertently brought us together all those years ago at that Halloween party. But the most beautiful moment was when I spotted Jordan in the 3rd row, sitting with Patricia and Robert. He was smiling, genuinely smiling, and when our eyes met, he gave me a small nod of encouragement. He'd come. Despite everything, despite the pain and the awkwardness and the complicated history, he'd come to see his brother get married. The ceremony itself passed in a blur. I remember the weight of Malik's hands in mine, the steady timbre of his voice as he recited his vows, the way he looked at me like I was the most precious thing in the world. "I promise to love you not just in the easy moments," he said, "but in the difficult ones. Not just when you're confident and sure, but when you're scared and uncertain. I promise to choose you every day, in every circumstance, for the rest of my life." My own vows were simpler. I promise to love you with my whole heart, to support your dreams, to laugh with you in joy and hold you in sorrow. I promise to never take for granted the gift of being loved by you. When the minister pronounced us husband and wife, when Malik kissed me as our families and friends cheered, I felt like the luckiest woman in the world. The reception was held at a small restaurant nearby, the same place where Malik and I had had our first official date. It felt fitting, somehow, to celebrate our beginning in the place where our story had really started. During dinner, Jordan stood up to give a toast. "I have to admit," he said, his voice carrying across the room, "when I first found out about Malik and Janelle, I wasn't exactly thrilled." A few people laughed uncomfortably. But watching them together over the past 2 years, seeing how they support each other and challenge each other and just plain adore each other, I've realized something. Sometimes love doesn't follow the rules we think it should. Sometimes it's messy and complicated and inconvenient, but that doesn't make it any less real. He raised his glass. "To Malik and Janelle."
May your love continue to be as stubborn and determined as it was in the beginning. Everyone laughed and drank, and I felt my heart swell with gratitude. Not just for Jordan's words, but for his presence, for his forgiveness, for the fact that our family was whole again. Later, as Malik and I swayed together during our first dance, I thought about the long, winding road that had brought us here. Any regrets? Malik murmured in my ear. About what? About how long it took us to get here. About all the complications and drama. I thought about it seriously. No, I said finally. I think we needed all of it. The waiting, the mistakes, the pain. I think it made us appreciate this more. Even the part with Jordan? Especially the part with Jordan. Because it taught us that love isn't just about feelings. It's about choices. About choosing each other even when it's hard. Malik spun me around, and I caught sight of our families and friends watching us with such joy and love that it took my breath away. I love you, Mrs. Henderson, he said. I love you too, Mr. Henderson. 5 years later, I stood in the nursery of our new house, painting the final touches on a mural of fairy tale characters. The room was nearly finished, soft yellow walls, white furniture, books already filling the small bookshelf. In a few months, our daughter would be here. How's it coming? Malik asked from the doorway. I turned to show him my work. What do you think? It's perfect, he said, wrapping his arms around me from behind and resting his hands on my growing belly. She's going to love it. You keep saying she. We don't know yet. Call it father's intuition. We'd been trying to get pregnant for over a year when it finally happened. The morning I saw those 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test, I'd cried for 20 minutes straight, not from sadness, but from overwhelming joy. We're going to be parents, I'd whispered to Malik when I showed him the test. We're going to be parents, he'd repeated, his voice full of wonder. Now, at 7 months pregnant, I was finally starting to believe it was real.
Jordan called, Malik said.
He and Sarah are coming to the baby shower next weekend. Jordan had met Sarah at a bookstore 2 years after our wedding. She was a kindergarten teacher with a laugh that reminded me of wind chimes and a way of making everyone around her feel comfortable. They'd been married for 6 months now, and I'd never seen Jordan happier. Good, I said. It won't be the same without them. Family dinners at the Henderson house had resumed about a year after our wedding. They were different now. There was an awareness of the history, a careful kindness between Jordan and me. But they were good.
Real.
We'd all learned to navigate the new normal. Have you given any more thought to names? Malik asked. We'd been going back and forth for weeks. If it was a boy, we'd settled on David after my grandfather. But if it was a girl, I keep coming back to Grace, I said. Grace Henderson, Malik tried out. I like it. Grace for your grandmother, and for my mother? Grace and Henderson, he said. Perfect. My phone buzzed with a text from my publisher. My novel, the one I'd been working on for years, had been published 8 months ago to surprisingly good reviews. I was already working on a second book, this one about second chances and the messy, complicated ways people find their way to each other. Publisher, great news. Grace and Second Chances hit the bestseller list this week. Congratulations. I showed Malik the text, and he picked me up and spun me around, careful to avoid my belly. I'm so proud of you, he said. I'm proud of us, I said. Look at what we built.
And it was true.
Against all odds, despite all the complications and heartbreak and family drama, we'd built something beautiful. A marriage, a home, a family. A life that was messy and real and absolutely perfect. That evening, as we sat on our back porch watching the sunset, Malik reached for my hand. Can I tell you something? He said. Always. Sometimes I think about that Halloween party. About what would have happened if I'd been brave enough to ask for your number that night. What do you think would have happened? Honestly, I think we would have dated for a few months and then broken up. I turned to look at him in surprise. Really? Really? We were different people then. You were still figuring out who you were, and I was so focused on impressing everyone that I didn't know how to just be myself. I think we needed to become who we are now before we could be together. So, you think the timing was right after all? I think the timing was perfect, he said, bringing my hand to his lips. Even the painful parts. Especially the painful parts. As if in response to our conversation, the baby kicked strongly against my ribs. She agrees, I said, laughing.
See?
I told you it was a girl. We sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned pink and orange around us. In the distance, I could hear children playing in their yards, dogs barking, all the sounds of a neighborhood settling into evening. Do you ever wonder what our story would sound like to someone else? I asked. What do you mean? I mean, if someone were telling it, our story, what would they say? How would they make sense of all the twists and turns? Malik considered this. I think they'd say it was a story about patience, about how sometimes you have to wait for the right person at the right time. And about forgiveness, I added. About how families can heal from even the most complicated situations. And about choices, Malik said. About how love isn't just something that happens to you. It's something you choose every day. The baby kicked again, and I placed both hands on my belly. What do you think her story will be? I asked. I don't know, Malik said. But I hope it's messy and complicated and absolutely beautiful. Like ours. Like ours. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, I thought about all the people who had played a part in bringing us to this moment. Jordan, who had loved me enough to let me go. Patricia and Robert, who had learned to accept the complicated reality of their family. Emily, who had always encouraged me to follow my heart. Dr. Martinez, who had taught me the difference between fantasy and reality. And Malik, who had waited 3 years to tell me he'd never forgotten that night we met, who had been brave enough to reach out even when it seemed impossible. Thank you, I said quietly. For what? For finding me.
For choosing me.
For building this life with me. Thank you for letting me, he said. We went inside as the night settled around us, turning off lights and checking locks, doing all the ordinary things that married couples do. But there was nothing ordinary about the gratitude I felt, about the awareness that this life, this beautiful, complicated, perfectly imperfect life, was ours. In the morning, we'd wake up and continue building our story. There would be good days and difficult days, moments of joy and moments of challenge. Our daughter would be born and grow up and create her own complicated love story someday. But tonight, sitting in the house we'd bought together, carrying the child we'd created together, surrounded by the life we'd built together, I felt like the luckiest woman in the world. Because sometimes, if you're very fortunate, if you're patient and brave and willing to forgive, the universe gives you exactly what you need exactly when you need it. Sometimes the what if becomes what is. And sometimes, that's the most beautiful story of all. If you've made it this far in my story, thank you. Thank you for listening, for staying with me through all the messy, complicated, beautiful parts. I know some of you might be thinking that I was selfish, that I should have walked away from Malik to spare Jordan's feelings. Others might think I was foolish to wait so long, to let fear and guilt complicate something that should have been simple. Maybe you're right. Maybe I could have handled things differently, better, with more grace and less drama. But here's what I've learned. Love isn't a math equation. It doesn't follow the rules we think it should follow. It doesn't care about timing or convenience or other people's feelings. It just is. And when real love finds you, not the fantasy version, not the version that exists only in your imagination, but the real, complicated, messy, human version, you have a choice. You can run from it because it's inconvenient, because it might hurt someone, because it doesn't fit the story you thought you were telling about your life. Or you can choose it. Choose to be brave. Choose to be honest. Choose to fight for something real even when it's difficult. I chose love. Not once, but over and over again. When Malik first reached out, when we had that first coffee date, when we decided to be together despite the complications, when we chose to stay together through all the family drama, when we got married, when we decided to have a family. Every day, I choose love. And here's the beautiful truth. Jordan chose love too. He chose to love himself enough to heal from our breakup. He chose to love his family enough to forgive us. He chose to love Sarah completely, without reservation, in a way that I never could have loved him. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone go so they can find the person who will love them the way they deserve to be loved. If you're watching this because you have your own what-if person, let me tell you something. Stop wondering. Reach out. Have the conversation. Take the risk. Not because it will definitely work out, it might not, but because you deserve to know. Life is too short to spend it wondering what might have been. If you're watching this because someone you love is with someone else, and it hurts, and you don't understand how to move forward, I see you. I feel for you. Your pain is real and valid and important. But their happiness doesn't diminish your worth. Their choice to be with someone else doesn't mean you're not lovable. It just means you weren't right for each other, and that's okay. Your person is out there. The one who will choose you completely, without reservation, without doubt. Don't settle for anything less. And if you're watching this because you're in a relationship that feels safe but not passionate, familiar but not exciting, please be honest with yourself and with your partner. Don't waste years of both your lives trying to force something that isn't quite right. Both of you deserve better. Love should feel like coming home and going on an adventure at the same time. It should be safe and exciting, comfortable and challenging. Don't settle for just one half of that equation. Finally, if you're watching this because you love messy, complicated stories about imperfect people finding their way to each other, thank you. Thank you for seeing the beauty in the struggle, for understanding that the best love stories aren't the simple ones. This has been my story. The story of how I found out my boyfriend was my college crush's brother, and how that impossible situation led to the greatest love of my life. It's been messy and painful and absolutely worth it. I hope your story, whatever it is just as beautiful. Until next time, keep believing in love. Keep believing in second chances. Keep believing that sometimes, if you're very lucky, the universe has a plan that's better than anything you could have imagined. I love you all. Good night.